Call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. Work on my IT here. Pledge of allegiance tonight will be led by the board. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer Lafata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosburg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. There are no presentations tonight. Item number 5, department reports. I do have a couple updates. Sugar Bush Road HMA resurfacing project is in progress. There will be a couple more weeks of intermediate lane closures while they work on structure adjustments, shoulders, approaches, and butt joints, but that project is ongoing. The M19 over Washington project is also ongoing, and it will be shut down to one lane, only, I guess it would be the eastbound traffic on Washington only until the end of June. The audit, fresh off the presses, is uploaded onto our website, and we will be having a presentation at the next board meeting with Plant Moran, and I'd like to thank Finance Director Vicki Bauer for that. And a couple updates from Director Sonnenberg.
Good evening. I just wanted to provide a couple updates on a couple of our projects. The first one is Fire Station 1 on 22 and Gratiot. You can see on the top that was the original photograph from before we started the project, and the bottom was taken this morning. We've made significant progress. We are about 99% done. We got our C of O inspection, and we're just wrapping up some loose ends. The project has gone well. We're under budget. We're pretty close to our time frame, considering with all the COVID changes and everything we had to work through. We made some pretty good time. We had a fantastic construction team. I'd like to thank Director Kersten and his team. They were always available to answer any questions working through this project. It's been a really good experience. We're hoping soon, once things get back to normal, we'll have an open house there, and we're looking forward to everybody seeing the interior. It's been a fantastic build, and if you drive by, the biggest compliment you can give a project like this when you do a remodel is it looks like it's always been there. So we're pretty happy with the results so far. So this next, you can go ahead and play this. This next one is just a quick site walk from this morning. This is the Weber Paddle Park. For those of you who haven't been there, I'm just going to take you on a quick 2-minute video walking down the path. This is the new path that was installed the last couple days, and you can see all the tree work that's being done, and there's some hay on either side where they're putting some seed down. The contractor here has been phenomenal. He's worked all hours of the days and weekends to keep this project going and on schedule. We couldn't be happier with the progress. You'll see in the next couple days, they have actually today, they started putting what's called a coffer dam out in a portion of the Salt River. We're going to pour a attachment point for our dock. We changed the dock from the original spec. We added a little bit different dock with some fishing area on it. So we're kind of excited for everyone to see that. And you can see here, we're coming up to where that pile of dirt is. That's actually where the roundabout is, where you're able to pull in and then turn around. So the contractor is actually going to donate a couple of trees and some tall ornamental grass there, which will be kind of nice. This path winds through the park, and it wraps all the way back around to Jefferson. So you kind of walk along the shoreline, which you'll see coming up here on the right. And then once you get farther up on the right, there'll be the parking lot, and that's where the paddle launch will be. And the we have a picnic table and a couple of trash cans. It's really, really pretty simple. That's kind of what we were after when we talked about this. Let's install it, see how it gets used, and then we'll go from there. But I do think that so far we've got a lot of positive feedback from the residents, and this is one of the projects I've really received the most calls on with some positive thoughts, even from the neighbors going over there at night and stopping and talking to some of them. So I look forward to everybody getting a chance to see it. Our goal is to have this project completed by the end of July, and we are pretty close to being on schedule. The dock should be installed later on this month, so that'll be a big step in that direction. So you can see here, I'm coming up to where the coffer dam area is, that white, it's like a big bladder they fill up with water to hold the water back while they dig the foundation. This is the sidewalk, and there's a handicap parking area, and then this sidewalk wraps back up to Jefferson. So that's really about it. And then the next one, you can go ahead, Dan, it's just the end of that one, just walking up the sidewalk. The next one I want to talk about is Brandenburg Park. So this is a rendering that you've all seen. And the questions I get the most about this project is when, and why has it been sitting so long? The only reason this project has been sitting as long as it has is there's a requirement by the DNR, NOAA, the DEQ, there's a whole host of agencies that work. And one of the biggest ones we had to deal with was fish spawning season. Because this is a fish habitat and we have a lot of in-water work, we weren't able to do any work, even start anything in the water until September 30th. So because of the high water and all the issues we've been having at the shoreline, I've been sending them a shoreline video every week, especially when it's windy and the waves are smashing over the shore. What we were able to do, and we've probably had a meeting every week with all the different agencies involved, is slowly but surely we've convinced every agency to take that fish habitat requirement off the table and let us start work earlier. The only agency we have left is the Army Corps, and we had a call with them actually yesterday, and they're coming on board too. They are working as fast as they can to get us our permit. So what we're hoping to do here in a perfect world is in the next couple months, long before September 30th, is actually start the project itself. We have quite a bit of funding, and the really good news too is NOAA, you'll see in the next couple weeks, we'll be back to the board. They have increased our funding to fund the whole project. So we're looking at just south of $1 million grant for this project so far. We'll finalize those numbers as we get closer, but it's pretty exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further departments or board members wish to update the board? Trustee Demink, and then I'll go to Clerk Berry. Thank you, Mr. Senator. Oh, and I'll come back up to Kevin. So
this is from the Leisure Services Department. The Leisure Services Summer Publication is available online at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. Limited registrations are being accepted for a number of activities, including an outdoor play program for busy parents who need a break while we entertain their kids. There's also tennis, art, football, fitness classes, story time, and more. The status of all programs are subject to change due to the pandemic response. As a precautionary measure in response to the coronavirus, the Chesterfield Township Senior Center is closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. Recreation programming through Leisure Services will have a slow phased-in opening based on executive orders, as well as the ability to effectively physically distance with sanitation protocols in place. You can engage with the Parks and Rec Department through the Facebook pages and the Senior Center. Our local parks, trails, and open spaces have always served as places where people can find respite, seek peace, and restoration. We encourage residents to visit our parks, but adhere to the recommendations. Thank you, sir.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Report from the Elections Department and the Clerk's Department. First, from the Clerk's Department, we will be resuming passport services in complete total service offerings on July the 6th. That will include new passport applications, photos, expedited service only if it is authorized by the U.S. Department of State. Also, although we will be accepting passport applications and processing them, sending them to the Department of State, it is entirely up to them once they receive those how long the processing takes. They are currently advising that it is taking several months in order to process passports because of the delay due to COVID-19. So while we will be anticipating the start of resuming passport services in its entirety, July 6th, again, we cannot guarantee the processing time once it is sent to the Department of State. Secondly, from the Elections Department, absentee ballots will be available as early as June the 20th. Those move military and overseas ballots, as well as the UCAVA ballots, will be available at that time for those individuals who qualify for those ballots. If you are curious, as if you do qualify for those, often those are individuals living overseas. They are members of the military and some other special circumstances. If you have any questions regarding those, please contact the clerk's office. We do anticipate that our first absentee ballot mailing, and that is for all of those who have completed an absentee ballot application and submitted that application to our office whether you submitted that in March or you submitted that recently for August or November. If you asked for an August ballot, we anticipate those ballots being mailed on the 29th of June. If you do not receive a ballot that you anticipate getting
if you asked
by
for
the
an
6th of
August
July,
ballot,
please
we
give us a
anticipate
call
those
and
ballots
we'll be
being
able
mailed
to
on the
track that ballot.
29th of
You may
June.
also track your absentee ballot online yourself through the Secretary of State's office. Our election department does have a link to the Secretary of State's tracking system on our website. Thank you.
Any further department reports? Looks like Assistant Director Johnson's going to make his way up.
Good evening, Board. Just a couple of things. First thing is I had a conference call with EPA regarding the Salt River Rehabilitation Project. We had that call yesterday. Right now, obviously with COVID, we're a little bit behind on some of the project, but right now their goal is to have 30% of the design completed by the end of summer. They're hoping for 100%, but obviously with the COVID, it's kind of pushed things back. But they're also talking about trying to figure out with the purchase of the Salt River Nature Center, how it's possible we can incorporate some of that project into this as well. Currently, there is no cost to the township for this Salt River rehabilitation project, so this might also be a possibility to get something going at no cost with this other parcel. I'm going to have Director Sonnenberg as a part of that call. Next time, we're going to hash that out, see if it's possible. I'll update you and let you know if anything's possible at all. But I just wanted to update you on that. And then as well as we urge people, if they can, to please sandbag, grab sand and sandbag while these days are beautiful. We are going to be having some not so nice weather the next few days, especially maybe tonight and tomorrow with the wind. So that's typically when people come out, is the last ditch effort. So we recommend when it's a nice day to try to come out and do it then. We do have Saturdays available to hand out sand and sandbags. So we urge people to come on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon to get sandbags as well. Thank you.
Any further department reports? Item 6 is the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If a discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 26, 2020. 6B, approval of the minutes of the special board meeting of June 2nd, 2020. 6C, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. Item 6D, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Item 6E, approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase meters and meter components from Ferguson Waterworks at a total cost of $7,726.14 from GL number 591-542-74000.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosburg. Discussion. Comments from the public. Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosburg to approve the consent agenda as written. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosburg. Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7, we do have a public hearing tonight. 7A.
Item 7A is to conduct a public hearing to review the special assessment rule and to hear any objections thereto for the proposed Roselawn Paving Special Assessment District, SAD.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Joseph to open the public hearing. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Anderson. Aye. Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
The public hearing is open. If you'd like to make comments, please state your name and address for the record and come up to the podium. Clerk Berry, do we have any comments submitted via the website?
We have no comments submitted via the website.
Seeing no public comments, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by trustee Demink to close the public hearing. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson. Trustee Vosburg. Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
The public hearing is closed at 7:16 p.m. Item 8 is the regular agenda. 8A.
Item 8A is to adopt Resolution 2020-19, number 5, for the Roselawn Paving Improvements Special Assessment District, SAD, confirming the special assessment role and providing for collection in annual installments for a 10-year period.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Barry, support by trustee Joseph. And our engineer here is here, Mr. O'Connor. And Dean is on the line, our assessor, if anyone has any questions. Motion by Clerk Barry, support by trustee Joseph to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Joseph. Trustee Anderson. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosburg. Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 8B.
Item 8B is a recommendation by Clerk Barry and Trustee Vosburg to approve Administrative Procedure Order APO number 14-2020, the Charter Township of Chesterfield Code of Ethics and Values, and adopt resolution number 2020-22.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Vosburg,
Support.
support by Clerk Barry. Discussion. Resolution, someone speak. Trustee Vosburg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Used to sitting down here. The language is quite easy to read and quite clear. I see this as something that all of our employees, our board members, and commission members are already adhering to this. It's just talking about good government, good representation as elected and appointed officials. So that when I was presented with this, I thought it was a great bit of language to add to the policies that we have here at the township. And I would encourage passage of this.
Trustee Anderson.
Okay, I have read it. I have a couple questions I'd like to ask the two trustees that introduced this, as well as a relevant suggestion. At a recent ZBA meeting, all the members read, acknowledged, and signed the Township Ethics Code. My first question, you may have partially answered it. What is the genesis and overreaching purpose of this APO that appears in front of us today? Either one of you could answer that.
Any further comments from the board? Oh,
Mr. Supervisor, I have a number of comments.
Question as part
Okay,
of
well, go, maybe ask both your questions and then I'll move.
Oh, you, okay, you want me to continue? You want me?
Sure.
Or, all right. You want my second question on my remarks on this? All right. Okay.
Not unless you would like trustee Vosburg to answer that now.
I would, if you wanted to. Please.
Thank you. I thought I answered it. I just thought it was a good policy for the for us to adopt and ask all of our board and commission members and employees to have that be part of their policies, just codifying things we already do. It's our job to provide good government, transparent, and in a polite manner and in a business-like manner. And that just has the wording for that in a very positive light. It's not a punitive thing at all. Whereas some codes of ethics, some organizations have punitive things, very strict things, and things you may and may not do. This is more with a positive vein, and I appreciated the language that this had.
Question number 2, trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Okay, in the goals of the Code of Ethics and Values, it cites and I quote, "the highest standards of personal and professional conduct among all involved in government officials, township staff, etc." My second question is to either of you, kind of a what if. How would you describe the ethical, perhaps legal behavior of a township staff member, department head, or elected member over the past 3+ years who's been collecting $90,000 or more of township dollars while being at his or her township workstation for 4 hours or less weekly? I'd be interested in either of your responses to that. And then I have a follow-up to that question. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? We'll go to Trustee Joseph.
I'm just curious, Mr. Supervisor, what the format is here. You know, none of us really got an opportunity to see this. This seems to be the work of a couple of trustees, maybe yourself. I don't know if you've seen it or participated in the creation of this. In terms of tonight, are you interested in allowing some Q&A to discuss this? Or, because I have some comments, but I don't think Trustee Anderson was done. And it seems like we're interested in moving on away from his questions. So I just want to make sure he has answered and got answers. I think Treasurer Lafata has some issues with this as well. So I'm just curious as to the format tonight, like what we're going to do to try to, get a good APO.
We're going to try to have a good business meeting.
Good.
As long as I think the questions are business meeting related and not political of nature, I will let it.
Will you be the lone arbiter of that? You will decide?
I think a back and forth is right. I think we can decide. The rules can determine how you question the rule of the chair. So a legitimate, honest business meeting is what I will allow to occur.
Thank you
and
for
if
that.
we waver beyond that, I will not put up with that.
So before I move, I guess I wanted to make sure that Trustee Anderson was done because he sounded like he had more, but we were moving on. So I thought it was a good business question. I'll yield until he's done.
Well, I see no one answering that question, so I don't know if it's been deemed whatever, but I would like to make a suggestion. I'd request that you postpone this APO and resubmit it with a 9th rider. There's 8 of them here now. And your 8 or the 8th items under the preamble started as a quote, "As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be ethical, professional, or service orientated, etc." with some language describing each, end of quote. I'd request that you postpone this APO and resubmit it with a 9th rider to your preamble. I would humbly make that suggestion as follows. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be honest, and I would be interested, patiently waiting and interested to see how that's described. Thank you much.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, so my questions and my comments kind of go to Trustee Anderson. Again, I don't really have an issue with any APO that says, we should treat each other with courtesy and respect. I think everyone generally agrees with that. The difficulty I have with the appearance of this is there's been a never-ending attempt to limit speech by way of APO. We've had several APOs that have focused on how long people can talk, when they can talk. If we don't like what somebody says, now it seems we're going to call it potentially unethical. And this to me strikes as another opportunity to limit speech, control speech, unpopular speech. And I have problems with it coming in the form of an ethics violation or an ethics APO. It just really is problematic that it's not something that was shared, in any kind of committee. And to be perfectly honest, Mr. Supervisor, I don't know the mechanism for enforcement of a very subjective and ambiguous and abstract concept. These are all open to interpretation. As we started to perhaps go down the path, if you decide that it's not business meeting caliber, I guess if there's sufficient votes to strike it down, does the individual who's deemed out of line get censured? I would really appreciate an ethics APO or a policy that has like some teeth. Let's call out ethical behavior and then decide as a board what we would like to do with what is not objectively unethical. I'm sorry, not subjectively unethical, but something that is self-evident. And I have some suggestions, and I would like the motion makers to consider these. If you don't come to work, if you're a full-time elected official and you don't come to work, and you cannot verify and account for your time the way that the township employees have to account for their time. So I know we don't do punch clocks, but we have timesheets. And if an employee comes to work for 10 hours and they don't have sufficient time in their PTO bank or their sick bank, they're docked. There's a docking. You know, they're not compensated for work they did not do. So if you have an elected official who is receiving a full-time salary and they don't work full-time and they can't document their work, could we include in the ethics policy a censure from the board? So we would just use the timesheet or whatever it is that the elected official submits as their 40-hour week. If they don't satisfy that, they get censured, and they're forced to return the pay that the residents entrusted them with because they accepted it fraudulently. That would be a good inclusion in the ethics APO. If you leave a board meeting before the board meeting is adjourned because you don't like the speech of another board member, I believe you should be censured by the board. I think that that is a complete disrespectful act, and you would be subject to censure by the board. That's not a subjective interpretation. That simply says that as an elected official, you come to the board meeting and board members are allowed to speak. And if you leave in the middle of the speaker and storm out of the meeting, that's unethical. You should be censured by the board. I have a problem with, we developed early on in our terms the QBS process. The QBS process affords appointees by the supervisor to serve as a selection committee for vendors that will be compensated for their services from the taxpayers. We select our attorney, our planner, our engineer from these QBS processes. We have had most recently a marijuana cannabis committee, excuse me. And we have a number of individuals who are very interested in seeing widespread cannabis distribution sites and so forth. I think it's unethical to serve on any one of those QBS committees, and during your service, while you're selecting a vendor to pay with taxpayer money, to accept campaign contributions from that vendor or any of the vendors that are interested in being a contractual service provider. I think that's unethical, and I think it should be included in our ethics APO. I think that any member who is caught acting unethically, as I've defined it, they should be forced to pay back the money and be censured by the board. If a board member brings forward a request for tax exemption for a campaign contributor, and that exemption has been told to us by our attorney and our township assessor to be not compliant with the rules of tax exemption status, and then that tax exemption is denied in the same way that the attorney and our township assessor said it should be by the Michigan Tax Commission, I think the members that voted for that were unethical, and that is a very subjective criteria. There are no, well, I think it's not a business meeting, or I think that is inflammatory, or I think that is offensive. Those are all open to interpretation. What I'm suggesting is a very objective measure. So if this behavior is perpetrated, that is a violation of our ethics policy, and then we define it a step further and we say, here is the sanction for violating the ethics policy. What this does is it creates a space where a simple majority can define something they don't like as unethical, and I have a problem with that. It's the fourth, by my count, it's the fourth attempt to limit minority opinion on this board. And the thought of somebody who hasn't worked very many hours in the last 4 years quantifying the board's ethics is not only laughable, it's really quite despicable. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? I think all those comments were laughable. Trustee or Treasurer Lafata.
No, Mr. Supervisor, did you have the floor?
Those were my comments.
Will you just add? Oh, okay.
Those were my comments. I'll repeat them for you. Your comments were laughable.
Your comments were just an attack.
Treasurer Lafata. Treasurer Lafata.
It seems like if somebody wants to put out an ethics policy, you should almost be a role model, and you should walk the talk. To be ethical, you should always follow the purchasing policies. You should follow the credit card policies. You should follow the board rules. There has been infractions of all of those recently, and nobody said it's unethical. And in fact, some people that have even authored this ethics policy have tried to say, well, I know we have board rules, but if we don't follow them, it's okay. To me, it's not ethical. Ethical is you walk the talk. You don't say, well, that doesn't apply at this point in time. There's really, unfortunately, other than what Trustee Joseph said, there's no punishment. There's really no committee that sits in judgment to judge what is ethical and what isn't. There's the co-author of this policy has not purposely, but continuously been in infractions of our purchasing policy, our credit card policy. It seems like it doesn't apply to elected officials, which this is supposed to, apply to. And if you don't have a commission and you don't have good wording, unfortunately, ethics is an abstract noun, and you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't measure it with a yardstick. There's nothing you can do to define ethics. So if somebody's going to say that's unethical, it's a judgment call. And if there's not a commission or a committee established and it's just left up to 4 people's votes to try and silence somebody, this policy is not ethical. This policy needs some amendments. It needs to put some teeth in it, because if there's no violation for violating an ethics policy, then it doesn't really have any meaning. And if you want, I'll give you a list of ethics. It's not unethical to take a campaign contribution from a contractual service vendor to the township. It's not illegal, but in terms it could be unethical. So who makes that judgment call? It's not illegal to take a campaign contribution from a contractual vendor, but it could be unethical. So who makes that judgment call? Is it a 4-3 vote, or is there a commission that actually has some determination and some documentation to really be ethical? Because this is really, there's nothing in here that legally binds a person for any kind of punishment for not being ethical, other than probably what Trustee Joseph is saying. It can be used to say, well, you can't talk anymore because you're not ethical. And that would be a judgment call in a short period of time, which really could not have any bearing. The other thing is there's stewardship that's involved. According to Michigan compiled law, our supervisor is responsible to make sure all policies and procedures are followed. When the purchasing policy isn't followed, is it ethical not to hold that person responsible and tolerate that so that there might be some consideration for a vote on something that's important? But the supervisor is responsible. I don't have the actual act. I could get it for you if I had to enforce all these. And there's been violations to the credit card policy, the purchasing policy. Currently, we're renovating clerk's office space and election space. We've run way over $5,000. Nobody's gone to do anything about coming to the board for these expenditures. And I was told, somebody said, well, just make it happen and satisfy this person. This is not ethical. We're not following process and procedures. It's not ethical. And there's nothing outlined in this document that I have that says that there's going to be something that's going to happen when you don't follow a process or a procedure. It's not ethical. When you take the credit card and you buy food for your employees that work for the voting, it specifically states in Michigan compiled law that employees it's not justifiable to buy food or refreshments for them unless citizens take part in it. And this goes on, it's been mentioned before. It's not ethical, but somebody keeps doing it. So how does somebody write a policy and is not a role model to the policy? Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Well, I certainly appreciate all of those comments, and I'm glad there's so much interest in getting our ethics and values here in the township right. I'm encouraged by that. I've probably seen more interest in this policy than I have a lot of other ones lately, and that's encouraging to me. I think although with a lot of the references are kind of difficult to follow for anyone who's listening in the public, and what I'd like to use some time to actually read this through, and I will try to do it quickly, and then give some references to where this came from. And I think once the board and the public understands where this came from, this was actually an award-winning ethics and values policy that was put together over several years in the city of Santa Clara, California. California has some of the strictest ethics laws on the books. Their local municipalities are required to have an ethics policy. And regardless of what you think about California or the cities there, I think that this is a good policy to adopt, if for nothing else, than to make the statement that this is what we believe. It is not meant to be punitive, as Trustee Vosburg mentioned. Other communities here in Michigan have tried to go that route, and it's problematic, not only from a legal perspective, but from an enforcement perspective. And this is meant to be more of a statement in terms of what we believe. I don't have a problem with anything I'm about to read here and believing it and living it here as well as in my personal life as well. So I don't have any problem with some of these tenets. And again, this was developed over a course of several years. It won several awards, and it was the best policy that I could find. And the thing I liked best about it was that it was the tone. And you'll see when I read it, it's the tone. It's not accusatory. It's not what you just saw here in the last several comments. It wasn't a tone like that. I believed that this was something we could all support and believe in, because I truly believe that all of my colleagues believe these things. I also would hope that not only do all of the members of our boards and commissions adopt and affirm that and be directed to follow these ethics and values policies, but also the vendors who do business with us. The vendors who benefit from taxpayer dollars should also be required. It should be in each one of our bid packets. It should be in each one of, should be part of an agreement with when vendors do business with the township that they will adhere to these values as well. And so I'd like to read them because I don't think anyone will have a problem with them. And if we'd like to expand upon them at a later date, I don't have a problem with that either. But I say let's adopt this because I think that these are good things and I think these will lead to good governance. The goals of the Code of Ethics and Values: to make Chesterfield Township a better community, built on mutual respect and trust, to promote and maintain the highest standards of personal and professional conduct among all involved in township government elected officials, township staff, volunteers, and members of the township boards, commissions, and committees. The Code of Ethics and Values is a touchstone for members of boards, commissions, and committees in fulfilling their roles and responsibilities. The proper operation of democratic government requires that decision makers be independent, impartial, and accountable to the people they serve. Chesterfield Township has adopted this Code of Ethics and Values to promote and maintain the highest standards of personal and professional conduct in the township's government. All elected and appointed officials, township employees, volunteers, and others who participate in the township's government are required to subscribe to this code, understand how it applies to their specific responsibilities, and practice its 8 core values in their work. Because we seek public confidence in the township services and public trust of its decision makers, our decisions and our work must meet the most demanding ethical standards and demonstrate the highest levels of achievement in this following code. 1, as a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be ethical. In practice, this value looks like I am trustworthy, acting with the utmost integrity and moral courage. I am truthful, do what I say I will do, and am dependable. I make impartial decisions, free of bribes, unlawful gifts, narrow political interests, and financial or other personal interests that impair my independence of judgment or action. I am fair, distributing benefits and burdens according to consistent and equitable criteria. I extend equal opportunities and due process to all parties in matters under consideration. If I engage in unilateral meetings and discussions, I do so without making voting decisions. I show respect for persons, confidences, and information designated as confidential. I use my title only when conducting official township business for information purposes or as an indication of background and experience, carefully considering whether I am exceeding or appearing to exceed my authority. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be professional. In practice, this value looks like I apply my knowledge and expertise to my assigned activities and to the interpersonal relationships that are part of my job in a consistent, confident, competent, and productive manner. I approach my job and work-related relationships with a positive attitude. I keep my professional knowledge and skills current and growing. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be service-oriented. I provide friendly, receptive, courteous service to everyone. I am attuned to and care about the needs and issues of residents, public officials, and township workers. In my interactions with constituents, I am interested, engaged, and responsive. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be fiscally responsible. I make decisions after prudent consideration of their financial impact, taking into account the long-term financial needs of the township, especially its financial stability. I demonstrate concern for the proper use of township assets, personnel, time, property, equipment, funds, and follow established procedures. I make good financial decisions that seek to preserve programs and services for township residents. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be organized. I act in an efficient manner, making decisions and recommendations based upon research and facts, taking into consideration short and long-term goals. I follow through in a responsible way, keeping others informed and responding in a timely fashion. I am respectful of established township processes and guidelines. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be communicative. I convey the township's care for and commitment to its residents. I communicate in various ways that I am approachable, open-minded, and willing to participate in dialogue. I engage in effective two-way communication by listening carefully, asking questions, and determining an appropriate response which adds value to conversations. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be collaborative. I act in a cooperative manner with groups of other individuals, working together in a spirit of tolerance and understanding. I work towards consensus building and gain value from diverse opinions. I accomplish the goals and responsibilities of my individual position while respecting my role as a member of a team. I consider the broader regional and statewide implications of the township's decisions and issues. As a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be progressive. I exhibit a proactive, innovative approach to setting goals and conducting the township's business. I display a style that maintains consistent standards, but is also sensitive to the need for compromise, thinking outside the box, and improving existing paradigms when necessary. I promote intelligent and thoughtful innovation in order to forward the township's policy agenda and township services. I think that's all good government. I don't have a problem with any one of them, and I think each one of us should strive to be better, because there isn't one of us here that serves who couldn't do better in some of those areas. Not one of us. I think all of us can do better. And I think by having these in mind and adopting them, we are acknowledging not only that we believe in these things, but that we are going to use them to the betterment of our residents and our community. We also acknowledge that while we are none of us perfect in how we demonstrate these things, there's always room for improvement. Anyone here who believes that they're perfect, I think you're just about a step away from the one who made us all. And I certainly am not that. So while none of us are perfect, I do believe that we can at least come together and together as a board say, we believe in these things and we are all going to do our best to achieve them. That was the goal. I'd like to extend that, not only, of course, on ourselves, but it's certainly extended to all of those who have any kind of contact or any type of work or business being done with the township. I can't imagine anyone adhering to these policies. I can't imagine anything bad coming from it. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Any comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. I read through this, and basically the only problem I had with it, it sounds more like a candidate's speech wanting to get elected. I think most people expect whoever they're voting for, whoever they elect to office, will abide by these things. But like I think Trustee Joseph and Treasurer Lafata both said, a lot of these things are subjective. If you want something that has to do with ethics, you put something with teeth in it. I had to sign an ethics agreement every year I worked for Ford. It involved things like you would only go to lunch with a vendor once or twice a year. You wouldn't accept gifts at Christmas time more than $20 or $25. It has specific things that had to do with ethics, and the ethics basically was based on that you didn't do any favors for anybody because they were giving you money. Now, you had a situation in the last regime with Lovelock, who was accepting money on the side, and nobody said anything till afterward about this. Now, if you want to put something in it, put something like those items in. How you deal with the vendor, what the vendor is responsible for you to do, and how much money he can give you, and what he expects for it, and put something together. Use your lawyer to bring things in like to get that together. These things are like, it's, you know, I want to be a good person. So what? Everybody expects everybody to be a good person that they're voting for. But I think people want to prevent certain things from happening that are real ethical violations. Thank you.
Any further comments? I think we'll start back up at Trustee Vosburg if she would like one right now. Any further comments? Trustee Joseph.
You have a public comment, Mr. Supervisor.
Oh, fabulous.
Thank you. First name is John, my last name is Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. I have a question. As I've been listening to the meeting tonight, as elected officials, you have to lead by example. And my question is to Trustee Hank. He had mentioned that apparently there's an employee that works half the hours and is getting full-time pay. I didn't hear a name. I'd like you to mention the name on who you guys were referring about. And I also heard something mentioned about renovation being over budget, and I didn't hear a name for that either. So if we can get a name, exactly who you guys are referring to. I mean, this is an election year, so the residents should know who you guys were talking about and what this is in reference to. And if an employee is putting out a code of ethics and is breaking the policy, I mean, it's a dog and pony show, in my opinion. That's my comment. I'd like a name and who you guys were referring to. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have zero problem with the name. The name is Cindy Berry. She's your clerk. And the assertion about work ethic is not mine. There are a number of her employees in the office every day. Ask them. It's not a secret. Everybody knows it. There's no rhyme. There's no secret or gimmick here. It's just fact. So
No.
I'm sorry. I
No,
can't
there's
go
no,
back
there's
and
no
forth.
back and forth. I'm sorry.
Just wanted to answer the question. The other thing that the very astute speaker raised is that this is an election year. This is a campaign speech. We heard it twice. There's absolutely zero reason to read that entire ordinance except that the individual, in my opinion, would like to be associated with the very endearing qualities of the ethics ordinance. Lecturing us about somebody else's work and that it's good governance and that it's an award-winning ethics policy for somebody else just means that you don't even have an original thought. We took it from somewhere else. I read it, and then I want you to accept that it's my ethics and my code, and anybody who thinks this is a bad idea must be against truth and honor. And so if I read to you the Boy Scout oath and talk about duty to country and God and my community, and I said if you didn't adopt that as the board rules, well, you are not in favor. It's just garbage. It's all it is. I won't spend too much time here debating this because it's just a cheap political stunt. I worked for a judge for many, many years, one of the most ethical men I've ever met. And as I listened to that being read, I thought of his statement, which went, a person who develops a reputation for being an early riser can sleep till noon. All you have going on here is an ethics policy that I would like you to perceive as my mantra, but I'm not coming to work tomorrow at 9 o'clock when the rest of the staff does. And I would like to apologize to anybody that links that type of work ethic with a Republican Party platform. This is not proper ethics in any way.
Hey, just no campaigning up here. There you cross the line.
You thought that was across the line?
There you cross the line. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing has turned into kind of a
in your opinion, and I appreciate that, but you didn't have a problem with this ridiculous.
Just try not to campaign.
Thank you.
I know.
The campaigning is done when you allow that ordinance to be read in its entirety. We all had it. It just happens to be your fourth vote, so you think you're going to get.
Okay. Now you're going to drag me into this.
Okay, well, I'll finish, then you can gavel and do your nonsense. The argument that I have here for this ordinance, I have great respect for Trustee Vosburg. Trustee Vosburg wanted to bring this ethics ordinance forward. I think she could have got more credibility by having a co-sponsor take this over to Supervisor Lovelock and have him sign off on it. You would have got more credibility in the passage of this. The inclusion of an individual who you know does not come to work is the problem that I have. So I'll vote for it. There's nothing in this package that I don't subscribe to. But the way that it comes forward a month before the presentation about when the absentee ballots are going out, you didn't fool anybody. There's a guy that came to the podium. I've never seen him speak before. He comes into the audience and he says, this is kind of ridiculous. What is this? The more people that see this, the better. It's just gimmickry. We can't do this. We can't do this. Go it on your own. You're an integrity-driven person. I have complete faith in you, whether we disagree about something or not. You incorporated somebody that you know doesn't come to work. How could you do that? I'm done.
Clerk Perry.
Supervisor.
Oh, I'm going to go to Trustee DeBate because you didn't have a round one yet.
Just a couple short comments. I believe in ethics. We've all had our discussions up here, heated discussions over the years, the ones that have been up here 8 years, some of us longer. I believe we do need some ethics. There is no time limit on it, which is good because I know a couple of us have gone back and forth. Sir, Mr. Joseph, I know you were totally against that, so there is no time limit on here. So that in regards to campaign finances, there are those that take campaign finances. We all know that's regulated by the state and it's all supposed to record it. You know, some do, some don't. I do. I don't take campaign finances, but people want to do that. Sometimes I don't think it's right, but they have to live with that. The public can go in the campaign finance and see who donates to anyone. We all know that that's out there. So those are just a couple things I have. Thank you, sir.
Clerk Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The only comment that I have, and I'm grateful for the question from the audience, and I'm grateful that Trustee Joseph answered it, because for years now, there's been this constant allusion to some of this misinformation. So I'm glad that they finally named me, because quite frankly, there's been a lot of somewhat closeted remarks, snark commentary, attacks, that sort of thing. There's been undermining. There's been a lot of not very good things. And I can tell you exactly where it came from. It started about 3 years ago when I refused to get on board with a team that wanted to attack the supervisor all the time. I said, I don't have a problem with Supervisor Acciavatti. I think he's doing a great job. I worked here under the old supervisor. I worked under with the new supervisor. And I can say without a doubt that this supervisor has made some incredible positive impacts on Chesterfield Township in the 4 years that I've been here.
Supervisor, you don't feel that's campaigning?
So,
You don't feel that's campaigning?
I think I should. I think
Well, she's complimenting you. That's not campaigning.
Go back and watch the tape. When you say a party, that's when you're campaigning. So just please stop interrupting people. Nobody interrupts you. Nobody interrupts you.
There's a call for point of order. That's all it was.
I don't even.
I know you don't understand it. I can tell you about it afterwards. It was a point of order. Just a point of order.
You're rude. You're obnoxious. Don't interrupt anybody.
That's an opinion. I had a point of order. That's all.
Excuse me.
Just stop interrupting.
Excuse me. Given the current attacks, 3 of them, I think I should get a little latitude and an opportunity to explain as well. Sometimes interrupting people is the only way that children can be heard, as we all know who've had them. I don't choose to do that. I choose to sit and listen and hopefully learn something. And I learned some things, and I think everyone else has as well. When it comes to this policy that I put forth, does anyone have any problem with anything in it? It sounds to me like they don't. There's some things they'd like to add. There's some things that perhaps some people would like to add, but I don't think anyone has any issues with what is here. And I think what is here is good. And I think that what we have to understand is that sometimes things get politically motivated. This is not one of them, however. Again, I don't choose to engage in personal attacks. I don't think that's good government. I think we're here to do the people's work, not to do our own business. But yet, I can only answer for myself. But I would like to address a couple of items that were specifically and directly related to me and attributed to me. They've been trying for 7 years, those who've been opposed in some way, shape, manner, or form, perhaps because I refused to vote for something that they wanted to do. I refused to engage in activity that would undermine another board member. Refused to go along with lies and misinformation that people wanted to spread. I won't do that either. And I was seen as disloyal to my team. I was seen disloyal. I was the 4th vote that got swung. My votes are my own. No one will bully me, coerce me, or encourage me in some negative fashion with threats. And I will not go into those, but there have been threats if I don't vote a certain way. My vote is my own. And I make my decisions based on how to receive the highest value of service at the lowest possible cost for our residents here. That's always been my intent. That has always been the way that I've done business here. And there are people that would like to say because they don't see me physically, that somehow work isn't being done. I say look at the results. Look at what we've done here. And I could enumerate them here, but that may be considered campaigning. And I respect the supervisor's request not to do that. There's a time and a place for that, and this is not it. But I assure you, they don't see emails at 2:30 in the morning. I assure you, they don't see staff meetings at 6 o'clock at night. They don't see the things that happen behind the scenes. And what I would encourage you to look at is the results. Look and see how many board members bring items to the table and put items on the agenda for consideration. How many board members spend time in professional seminars and to achieve certification so that they can learn their job, or perhaps they just let their deputies do it. Make no effort whatsoever to learn so that they can make the best decisions on a daily basis with what they are supposed to be doing from a statutory perspective and fail miserably at. But I'm not interested in what other people do. I can only answer for myself and what I do. With regards to some of the expenditures that have had to be made here, I haven't been happy with either. However, in 2018, the voters mandated through their vote that we take certain actions in the area of elections. We have had to make certain modifications, physically and otherwise, and from an operational perspective, in order to comply with that mandate. And I will not, and I don't care how much other people have issues with it or how many arrows I have to take on it, I will do whatever it takes to enforce the law. And I will do whatever it takes to implement the policies and procedures and recommendations of the Bureau of Elections. That's what I'm charged with doing. I am charged with maintaining and conducting ethical, honest, and accurate elections. And that is what I will do. As far as my votes on the board and what I do as a member of this board, the decisions that I make are thoughtful, they are meaningful, and I know why I voted for every single thing I voted for and against every single item I voted against. I don't do it because I have friends, because I want to curry political favor. I don't do it because I want the right people to recognize me. I don't do it because I want my staff to like me. I don't do it for any other reason other than to reduce the size, scope, and cost of government and to maintain the highest quality of service at the lowest possible cost. It's always been my motivation. So anyone who's interested in taking a look at the work that's been done in the clerk's department and in the area of elections, the recognition that we have received in our department by implementing those changes, and the tremendous benefit that the residents have received, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you anytime for as long as you'd like, anywhere. And I do that on a regular basis. So those are the things that I subscribe to. These are the principles that I believe in and that I try every single day to do the very best that I can do. And I would hope that my colleagues would forego all of the other things and ask yourselves, is there anything in what's been presented tonight that you disagree with? If there is, then vote no. But I believe that each one of us believes in the principles that I read out tonight, and that's why I read them, because they were referenced several times, and I felt it only fair if we're going to reference them that we know what they are. I don't disagree with any of them, and I don't disagree with making amendments, but I urge passage tonight so that we can speak in one voice that we believe these things. And then, as far as the implementation of them, perhaps we need to hold ourselves accountable before we hold others. That is what I plan to do, and I'd like to urge passage, and I encourage support so that we can stand together as a board and pledge to our residents this is what we believe and this is how we'd like to do business. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this vote for 2 weeks till our next board meeting to afford the opportunity.
Motion to postpone by Trustee Joseph to the next board meeting.
I hadn't finished my motion. To afford the board the opportunity to have additional input and make additions to this APO.
Motion to postpone by Trustee Joseph. Is there support? Support by Trustee Anderson. That is a debatable motion. Any discussion on just the postponement?
Yeah, just to speak on the postponement, I agree in sentiment with the items outlined in the APO. I think you heard Trustee Vosburg from at least 3 board members who would like some opportunity to add to this. And rather than do it by piecemeal, I know you guys are not a fan of that. I would like to have opportunity to submit some of the requests that strengthen this ethics ordinance and allow the 3 members, an opportunity to present to you or to the board these additional ethics that I'm sure we will all be in complete agreement with as well. So to allow some time, 2 weeks, to strengthen this APO, this excellent APO that comes to us that helps us to be more ethical, we can add to it and make it stronger with consequences for violations. So we could have additional 2
Who
weeks to submit
supported your
this.
motion? Do we have support yet?
Yeah, Trustee Anderson supported. I'm sure the clerk recorded that for you. So if we could get 2 weeks to make some additions, that would be great.
Just on the motion to postpone, we will be back depending on what happens to the motion to the item. Motion to postpone by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Nay.
Trustee Vosburg.
No.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
No.
Clerk Berry, no.
Motion to postpone fails. Back to the item. Trustee Anderson.
Okay, I just had one more comment. I was talking, we're talking about, apparently you don't want to amend this. We had a former supervisor, or elected official here that brought a lot of discredit on himself.
Yes.
Trustee Anderson, go ahead.
Mr. Supervisor,
Trustee
just a
Anderson,
point of
go ahead.
order, just a point of order if we could clear this. There's a lot of side conversations. There's a parliamentary inquiry from Treasurer Lafata regarding the motion to postpone. I don't know if it's an audio problem, but I couldn't hear either. His question was, did the motion fail?
Clerk Berry, would you reread
Thank you.
the results of the last motion, please?
Motion to postpone. Aye votes. Trustee Joseph, aye. Trustee Anderson, aye. Treasurer Lafata, aye. Trustee Demink, nay. Trustee Vosburg, nay. Supervisor Acciavatti, nay. Clerk Berry, nay.
Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, we had a former township government member here that brought disgrace upon this community and himself by his behaviors, criminal behaviors. It looks like you don't want anything to touch this document. What I would hope that you would look at is in your preamble adding a 9th area, which would deal with honesty and flesh that out to go along with the other 8 items you have. I've asked you, earlier that, but apparently nobody wants to talk about honesty. Thank you.
Trustee Vosburg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to respond to that. When I first heard the speaker mention honesty, I thought, well, that's got to be in here. It's in the preamble. I will be, number 1, as a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be ethical. I am trustworthy. I am truthful. Truthful is a synonym for honesty. So it is in here.
Oh, so we have an English class going on here now? Homonyms.
No, Anderson, you're done. Anderson. Trustee Anderson. We're on to Trustee Vosburg. I allowed that first time. Trustee Anderson.
She was going on.
I asked if you were done. We're on to Trustee Vosburg. Trustee Vosburg, please.
Trustee Anderson, this is a business meeting. Only compliments to the supervisor will be tolerated.
Trustee Vosburg, you may proceed.
The basis of being ethical is being truthful, is being honest. It is stated in here in the very first section. That's what I wanted to point out. It's a great thing that was pointed out, and was wondering if it's in there. Thought needed to have another statement to that effect. I'm just saying it's already in there. And regarding adding other things to it, I have no problem adding other things to it, but I do, in terms of if we want to improve the language, things like that, But in terms of right now adding any kind of penalties for not complying or anything, I think we'll hold this up because I don't think they can be handled in a 2-week time period. They can't be. So I think this statement is a very clear, very open, very transparent statement. We can always add to it. I just don't want to have it held up and then never get passed. Thank you.
Treasurer Lafata.
Well, if this is about being truthful and honest, I'll have to go back and make some comments about our clerk's statements. Best possible product for the best cost. $32,000 cell phone contract that was never brought to the board, was never approved by the board. Finally, after 2 years, we got that contract canceled, and currently we're paying about half that for our cell phone costs. So if we're going to be
Stay on the policy. Do the best you can. Do the best you can to stay on the policy.
We're talking about on policy, and we're talking about some statements that were made during this.
Just try to make yourself a nexus, okay? Please, just do the best you can.
Somebody made some statements and about.
Get back to it. Go.
Ethics.
You don't have to explain it. Just stay on the policy.
It would be unethical for me to.
There you go. Now you got it.
It would be unethical for me to accept a lie. So don't want to be unethical. I just want to state facts. I don't lie, state facts. It is true that the clerk does not come in and hold proper business work hours. She doesn't. She comes in very sporadically, and it's unbelievable how somebody can take a paycheck from the residents and do that. But it would be unethical for me to lie. I'm telling the truth. You can ask anybody in the office. Since somebody mentioned this, and we're talking about being truthful, it kind of opens the door. Purchasing policies aren't followed by the clerk.
Stay to the policy. Go, Trustee.
No,
stay to the policy.
No, somebody else.
The statement's in front of you. Stay to the policy.
But somebody made reference to this policy and what it meant to her. And what it meant to her was the fact that she thinks she's being ethical, and in truth, it's not being ethical.
Say whatever you want to say.
It would be a lie for me not to be ethical. It would not be in good tune not to be ethical. The problem is nobody holds themselves accountable for their own unethics. And it's rampant in the workplace. It happens all the time. And if you're going to have an ethics policy and somebody's going to say it doesn't apply to me, it's no good. So if it's something that 4 people are going to enforce, it's no good. There's got to be some teeth in it. There should be some amendments. If you want to dock me a week's pay because I didn't come into the office for 4 days, I could understand that. If I don't come in for 4 days and I don't have vacation time because I've already taken 3 months off, since the beginning of the year, I could understand getting my pay docked. But this ethics policy is only for those people that are really ethical, because ethical people are going to follow this policy. People that aren't ethical aren't going to follow it, and they're going to say, yay, look what I did. Thank you.
Go ahead, Clerk Larry. That was a direct shot at you there.
That's fine, Mr. Supervisor. I was simply going to call the question, but I understand you haven't had the opportunity to make comments. I apologize.
I've been in and out of public service for 30 years. Touched the time in the legislature. It kind of grew up in my blood, back in the private sector. This ethics statement, and it's a statement, which I saw on Friday or whenever everyone else did when it was published. I was just as surprised as everybody else. However, when I read the statement, it's a very nice statement. It really is. However, I also read it with a chuckle. For anybody who's ever watched these meetings for the last 3 years, I laughed. I've never been so proud of what's been going on here in Chesterfield, and I've never been so disappointed by the behavior of members of this board. And without attacking, and I don't want to get into this ugly place, regardless All I can say is none of it's legitimate. And I've seen it without, whether you want to get into details, come knock on my door. The mess that we did have to clean up after 16 was deep, and the obstacles to that mess, you know, if you've been watching the meetings for the last 2.5 years, it's going to be pretty obvious. Ethics is not something that you can write down in a statement, which is what this is. If we could function at all as a board, we could draft a true ethics policy that deals with all the things that were brought up here tonight. This board is the most dysfunctional board I have ever been involved with. And I've been involved with some dysfunctional ones. This ethics policy or this ethics statement is generic as it is, and is at least it's a starting point. The APOs easily amendable. So if anyone on this board wants to add another piece to it, it's easily doable. In the legislature, we had some very deep-rooted, difficult debates and discussions with people who are on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. And I have never experienced the disrespect, the lack of decorum, and the ridiculousness of this board. It's almost to the point where I can't hardly even control this meeting, and it is a disservice to the township. This policy as written, I think, is a fabulous start to try to get some professionalism, and I think it's ridiculous that we spent an hour and a half or an hour on this topic that has nothing to do with an actual ethics statement and everything to do with shots and low blows. If you want shots and low blows, come see me in my office. I got a pile of them, but it doesn't belong here, and especially when they're not legitimate. Clerk Barry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to call the question.
Motion to call the question by Clerk Barry. Support by Trustee Vosburg. Clerk Barry, please call the roll. It's a non-debatable motion.
Motion to call the question by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Vosburg. Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Treasurer Lafata.
No.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Clerk Barry, please. We have a motion by Trustee Vosburg, support by Clerk Barry to approve item 8B as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
No.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item
Yes, thank you.
8C.
Item 8C is postponed from the April 14th, 2020 regular Township Board meeting. A request from Treasurer Lafata to continue the current water and sewer rates without increases through July 1st, 2021.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Barry. Is there support? Support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As the maker of the motion, I'd like to state my reasons for why I'm supporting this item at this time. Prior to this meeting, this item had come before us in April, and I didn't believe we had sufficient information at that time to make a decision or a determination. There were a lot of moving parts. There were a lot of balls still in the air, both at the state level, federal level, and so forth. And I think there's not anyone who can argue that from April 14th until today, we've had an awful lot of change, and a lot of things have settled down. And I believe that we are now in a position to adopt this measure. And I feel comfortable with the information that we have received and the various pieces of legislation that have moved, that I'm now comfortable moving forward on this item, and I applaud Treasurer Lafata for bringing it forward, and I'm very happy to make the motion, and I hope that we will have unanimous support to continue the current water and sewer rates without increases to assist our residents through July 1st of next year.
Any further comments? Treasurer Lafata.
None of the documentation that wasn't available at the meeting when this was postponed till the day changed any of the financial data that's in this package. The same data from Great Lakes Water, from Macomb County Drain Commissioner. It was all compiled and in here for the last meeting. So I'm really not understanding. I mean, I appreciate the support by our clerk, but none of the financial data or the facts changed since the day this was postponed. I'd just like to mention that. I think it's a good idea since the Great Lakes Water is not going to increase the rates and our Macomb County Commissioner is not going to increase the rates, that we just pass this on to our residents. It's not a lot of money. It's a little over a couple $100,000. And we're not going to see that because it's not coming from the Great Lakes Water or the county. Township Board might even want to consider going a little bit farther in the future because I think the residents are going to start to feel after July 25th, the CARES Act gets eliminated, and those that are still laid off, which it actually, I guess, the month of May, actually there was a little bit of dip in the unemployment rate increase that people have been petitioning for. But once the $600 July 25th dries up, there could be some issues with our township residents, and they might be needing some help. Thank you.
Trustee Vosburg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would like to offer an amendment that we accept this policy through December 31 of 2020.
Is that a question to the motion maker?
No, well, I can ask her if she'll take a friendly amendment, but if not, then a regular amendment.
I would concede to amend my motion, and my thought is, and it just made me think of it when you said it, when you mentioned the date, there will be a new board here, and that board is going to need to deal with the budget for that following year, and I think that it would make sense to make this only effective through this year's budget, and then if the new board wishes to continue it based on their decisions on the 2021 budget, then they can do that. So I think that makes sense from a budgeting perspective, and I would be willing to make that amendment and to adopt this without increases through December 31st, 2020.
Is there continued support with a change of December 31st, 2020 versus June 31st, 2021?
I'll support that.
Could I?
We have amended motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee. Oh, I'm sorry. Joseph was the supporter,
That's
right?
correct.
Is there continued support on changing the date with support by Trustee Joseph?
Okay.
I don't want, yes.
Thank you to the maker and the supporter. And one of the reasons is already stated that there'll be a new board in place, and I think it's difficult enough for a new board to come in, and then if we put something on them that they have to adhere to for a few months, that might be troublesome. I don't know. The other thing is, I don't know that we are guaranteed that there will not be an increase through the duration.
We know the increase, and it's October 1st.
Yeah, so something will come into play. Some kind of increase will come into play. This way, we would be the general fund would be kind of eating that increase, but thinking we can do that for the benefit of the taxpayers and the ratepayers. Thank you. Or the water fund. The water fund.
I don't want to mess this up too bad, but in that 20 years I've been in and out of public service, this is the most unique vote that I'll take. So an affirmative vote on this issue, this item, and a no vote on the item are going to lead to the exact same result, which is the same water rates that we have. So that was kind of like the reason why the postponement happened when this was brought back months ago. There are a whole lot more moving pieces, so Treasurer Lafata, I agree. There could be more relief because there are a couple more CARES Acts coming through. Generally speaking, I'm comfortable with this till October 31st, and I'm proud that Chesterfield Township has one of the, if not the lowest water rates in the entire region. That's what we have here in Chesterfield. One of the, if not the lowest water rates in the entire region. So the goal is to continue well into the future to make sure we're on the bottom end of that rate structure from GLWA and the other water suppliers. And in order to do that, that's utilizing technology, following through with our asset management plan, fixing the maintaining your system now, whether it's sanitary sewer, stopping infiltration, or water main to make sure you don't have leaks, which we have 0 to none on each of those. Staying on top of those construction projects, that will make us be able to stay with one of the, if not the lowest water rates in the region, which is where we stand right now. So that's my comments on that, and there'll be a whole lot more on this to come. We actually have a special board meeting on a nexus to this on June 22nd. So, Trustee Anderson.
Yes, sir. Dovetailing on your comments there, I agree with them, but I'd also like to point out that in the past board, Trustee Joseph, Miss Berry, we have a couple people, Citizen at the time, Lafata, Mr. Kadich, all worked on water and sewer rates. They put a tremendous amount of time historically going through that, crunching numbers, everything else, and I believe this is an extension of their work that they did several years ago. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We have a motion by
Supervisor, may I speak on this?
Trustee Joseph.
Just kind of piggybacking on the comments you made and then Trustee Anderson. We do have some of the lowest water rates in the region. It's not an accident. We have focused very laser-like on water department efficiencies and making sure that we have a lot of issues in the township. We have flooding issues, and people see water over the bridge, water over Jefferson. That is not water, that is water bill money. That is DPW money. And making sure that we separate the cost of what actually you're paying for on your water bill is an ongoing struggle. We'll continue to do that because water department efficiencies are what drives down the cost of your water bill. And so when we have DPW doing things that are not coming out of the general fund as they should, but coming out of the enterprise fund or the water portion of it, that's when we run the risk of having higher water bills. So as Trustee Anderson mentioned, some of the causes for this are very good stewards, and the Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Committee that I chaired several years ago had the benefit of Treasurer Lafata, who never missed a meeting. And it was the reason that I think he ran, and I appreciate the work that's been done to keep these water rates down and to maximize efficiencies. And I would like to continue to see our rates remain the same in comparison to other communities, the lowest rates in the region. I agree with that, and we'll be working very hard to continue that. Thank you.
Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph to approve amended motion 8C. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. 8D.
Item 8D is to approve a request from JD and SY Inc. for a fireworks vending application variance for a 20 by 40 tent at 29230 23 Mile Road, Chesterfield, Michigan 48047 for the sale of fireworks from June 24th, 2020 through July 5th, 2020. Business operating hours are 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
trustee Joseph, support by trustee Vosburg. I think trumped you. These are legacy. They come here every year. It's essentially a tent variance, and the petitioner is here if anyone has any questions. Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I don't so much have I may end up having a question for the applicant, but I'd just like to make a comment from a historical perspective. Historically, when we have approved these variances, the tent variance is within the square footage, total square footage of what we have approved in the past. However, the hours of operating we have in the past limited those from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. The applicant is asking for an extension to 10 p.m. And I just know that there's been discussion on the board in the past about the end time more specifically on these to make it more consistent with other retail establishments in the area that have that kind of standardized hours. So we had it stop at 9. I don't have an issue extending it until 10 p.m. so long as public safety does not have an issue with that. But I would like I'm interested to know, how my other board members feel about the extension to the 10 p.m. I will be supporting this item in the variance as it stands, but I would also support, if someone were more comfortable with a 9 p.m. end time, I would be comfortable supporting that as well.
I echo that as the support on this motion. I would just point out that also what we have had a tendency to do in the past is when we approve the first, we have parity among the subsequent applicants so that we don't have, patrols and fireworks, for sale, before and after, depending on the timeframes that we approve. So I think we've had some policy discussions about whether that was appropriate. And although we should consider each applicant on its own, I think we do so, if we approve this, we do so recognizing that it sets the bar for the rest. And I would like to make sure that we're not compromising patrol of these events, sales events. Also, I don't think we are really set up for a number of petitions the way we have in years past. I'm guessing the petitioners are having difficulty even getting to local municipalities because of the COVID-19. Typically, we see these application requests in May, and we're right on top of your sales season. So I can't imagine a whole lot more petitioners coming in. So I'm comfortable approving this and setting this as the bar for any petitions that come in between now and the next board meeting.
Any further discussion? Motion by trustee Joseph, support by trustee Vosburg to approve item 8D as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Nay.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8E.
Thank you.
Item 8E is to approve a recommendation by Supervisor Acciavatti to appoint Angela Antico to the Zoning Board of Appeals, replacing James Klonowski, term through September 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve. Support. Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by trustee Joseph. Discussion. Very impressed with Angela, and I think she'll be a fantastic member of the. No. Oh. I'm sorry. It's been a long meeting already for me. Any discussion from the board? Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 8F.
Item 8F is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to appropriate $50,000 for restocking of garbage carts, recycling carts, and compost carts as needed from GL number 10100010100.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Acciavatti, support by Clerk Berry. And I do believe we have Assistant Director Johnson here and our Finance Director.
Yep. Good evening, Board. As you read in the agenda item, we are looking for a $50,000 to spend on garbage carts. I know in the past, I've been coming with actual orders, but at this time, with how much the orders have been coming in, it'd be easier to get the funds available so that I could order them on an as-needed basis. The carts, it takes roughly 4 weeks from the day I deliver, or from the day I order to get them delivered. So I'm trying to minimize that time frame because it's normally another week and a half from the agenda item to get it approved and on the agenda. So to give you guys an idea of what's going on, the last 10-day period, we've had 362 orders. On average, in the first 4 to 6 months, we averaged 50 orders per month. We've actually had 224 cart orders since June 1st. So this has definitely exploded since GFL posted this cart program on the flyer that they send out to our residents every year, as well as we posted it on Facebook. The residents, from what we've seen, have been extremely happy with this service and the time for our delivery. They've been very excited on it, and we've heard good things. So I'm just looking to come, for the first thing was for the funds to come with the order, just so I can, since we have this current program in process, we're trying to keep it going. So I'm here for that. And then as well, I know that Treasurer Lafata asked on May 12th for some information. I promised it on the 26th. I apologize, I did not have it prepared for that meeting. But I did speak and work with Finance Director Bauer to get this information compiled. So she's just going to do a real quick synopsis of the numbers just to make sure I don't get any accounting terms wrong.
Like Kevin had said, he had asked me to come here and give a quick synopsis of the cart profit and loss statement. I don't think we were able to get it on the screen because of Zoom and everything else like that, so I did print out prior to the meeting and put on each one of your guys' chairs kind of a statement of what we're going to be going over. So this is just for the year 2020. The number of carts sold from January through May has been 405 carts. So at the top area there, you can see, kind of a breakdown. We have 4 different carts that we sell. And you can see like in the back end, like the majority of our carts are 42.7% of the 96-gallon trash cans. Right underneath that is actually going through and talking about the sales revenue for it. Right, we do have the sales price per can that is including tax that we would sell to the residents. And so you can see for that first 5 months, we brought in $21,890.06. Following that area is our cost of goods sold, which is actually the price that we're paying for the carts. And you can, like on that chart there's an actual cost per can. So you can see directly below that's the gross profit. It's what we sell it for minus what we bought them for. For this time period, we are to the good of $4,796.56. But that's prior to our operating expenses. I broke them out into 2 different groups. And actually, in going through this, I went to the different departments and asked, kind of like a little bit of a study, how much time are you taking to deliver the carts and the prep work, cash receipts. So in that operating expense area, there's the employee costs to actually deliver the carts. And then there's the general administration. And like I was saying, we've included everything, including like the storage rates, how much is it costing us to actually house the carts. From that, you also have in a separate section taxes, because we are not the final end user of this. We actually do collect taxes on this and remit them monthly to the state. Basically, the bottom line for all of this is 2-pager that you had. We are at a net loss of $19,170.53 through January through the May time period. I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that I can go over in more detail.
Any questions or any comments from the board? Treasurer Lafata.
sorry. This is a pretty thorough price forecaster data. I looked at it. It didn't, the copy I had originally didn't have April, didn't have May in it. Now it's got May in it. I saw the update that was sitting here in front of me. It seems like, it doesn't seem, it seems like the more carts we sell, the more money we lose. It goes hand in hand. Chesterfield's cost for a 96-gallon cart is $58.30. If a resident was to buy it from GFL, it'd be $85. There's a $26.70 differential. The township could give a resident the $26.70 and still save $16. It doesn't really make a lot of sense right now. The other thing is we did a human resources management advisory directive. We transferred a long-term employee to that position to put this together. Very expensive employee. Just his hourly time in this helps to spike the cost. The other thing that you don't see in here is the admin costs for taking cash receipts and everything has been constant. And the more transactions you have, the more time and more for the transactions and the bank accounts and the money transfers and the process of the paperwork. So those are constant, really, they increase every time the volume increases. I couldn't understand how anybody in a business atmosphere would want to do this. It's common in a manufacturing practice that if you have a large assembly and it's got a lot of parts in it, you take each one of those assemblies and you do what we call a make-buy. Can I make this part and still sell it as a profit or break even for my assembly? Or can I outsource it and be better off financially? This one tells you that it should go back to where it belongs. Another thing we don't have in here is there's a disclaimer letter from GFL, and the bullet point on the first page says that GFL will not be responsible for any damage to those carts, even if they do it. So the longer these carts are in service, there's a chance that we're going to start getting warranty because there's no contracts or there's no disclaimers when we sell these carts to the residents. No, the residents need them, but what we're doing right now, we could subsidize the cost of the residents and still be ahead and use our resources for something better. This makes no sense at all. It makes no business sense. According to Clerk Barry, you give the residents at the best possible price. This is not the best possible price because we could go back to GFL, we could hand them $26 and still save $16 to $17 per cart, not worry about any warranty. They will replace the carts if they break them. All you have to do is pick the phone up because there's a disclaimer. I couldn't support this if I wanted to. It's against everything that I've done for the last 50 years. Thank you.
Go ahead if you want. If not, I will. We'll be having a back and forth. But I think you addressed that at you.
So I guess the two things for the warranty costs, since we really haven't had any warranty issues, and this is simply a profit and loss statement. No, they're not included in here because we have not incurred any of them. I do understand what you're saying. On the other one with the cash receipts, I actually have, and I'll email it out tomorrow. There's some pretty handy formulas in these. And so when cart sales go up, our variable cost will go up. You're absolutely right. But I did build that into this model. So you'll see on, for example, the cash receipts for month one, and that's actually going to be for the treasurer's cost. I have it $347.03. but in May, it's $661. That's because the cart sales, and again, those variable costs, went from 61 in January to 126. So it wasn't just like a generic, like I'm assigning a cost. It actually was how much time does it take for somebody to receipt the money into treasurer's office? What is the average cost of the employees that are going to be doing it? And then the cells are formula driven to say, okay, if we sell this many in these top categories, the bottom categories will update. And again, I'm more than happy to, because it's nice to, you know, if you guys be able to play with it, I will send that out to you guys.
We'll go to Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I didn't have any questions on the numbers. I think it's a very thorough cost analysis. It's what we asked for, and you delivered exactly what we asked for. The numbers are the numbers. So you did a very nice job of laying it out, and I appreciate it. So thank you for that. The number that I looked to when I first got the sheet was just simply the net loss, profit or loss. When we were sold this, I don't know what to call it. When we were sold the idea of going into the trash can business, it was in the midst of real problems with pickup. It kind of goes back to last spring. This was offered as some kind of a resolution to that problem. It really had, in my opinion, back then, it had nothing to do with the problems that were being reported by GFL, which were, compost pickups. But this got thrown in there as a wonderful business idea. It was, thoroughly vetted and well-researched, and we heard all of the same buzzwords, extremely proud of the team, extremely optimistic. We heard about people's business prowess and why this was. And I remember specifically Treasurer Lafata raising an issue with, I went home and I looked up some of the terms that he was talking about, but a return on investment, a make-buy plan, something that he referred to, which caught the ire of some board members when he said, in the real world, in the business world, you do a cost-benefit analysis. First, you determine if you can outsource it or buy it, which is cheaper, which is a better product, and you factor all those in. But we didn't do any of that. We just saw a presentation. If you recall, they were lined up like the car show. They were different models with imprints. And what we find is the deeper that we get in, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something? Sure. Oh. What we find as we get into this is that every month we're in the trash receptacle selling business, we're losing money. And Treasurer Lafata pointed that out, and there was a discussion. Supervisor Acciavatti's jumping at the to rebut that and said he wanted you to address the variable costs. And I don't think that as the last 6 months of loss tick up, I don't know what the argument is. So we lose money in the operation, but we'll make it up in volume. I'm not a business guy, and I was told last board meeting that there's business decisions that are made by business owners, and they know these things. It just seems to me, if you're losing money on the cart, the concept of selling more of them is not taking the bank account in the right direction. So I suspect now what will happen is after we were told this was exactly why we didn't want to go into the cart business, the argument will shift. We'll see a major pivot tonight, and the pivot will be not in the revenue and the dollars and cents, but in the feelings of the wonderful gifts that the residents have had bestowed upon them because the township provided them with a cart. The reality is that the savings that are provided to those fortunate enough, and I noticed Supervisor Acciavatti, by the way, it's not ethical to not pay attention when people are speaking and to be on Facebook, but that's okay.
I don't do Facebook.
Don't interrupt, please. It's against the business rule meetings. The thing that bothers me is that when you have a business model replaced by good feelings, and we say to the residents who were fortunate enough to receive a cart, they receive the cart at the expense of the other residents who are subsidizing that. The money, the $19,000, in the loss column was paid for out of the general fund, I assume. And the taxpayers paid for that. So the people that got the carts are going to naturally be in favor of the cart program. You know the saying, if you rob from Peter to pay Paul, you can always bet on the support of Paul. We're taking from one and we're giving to another, and we're doing it under the guise of a wonderful cart program. A bedazzled cart will appear at your home cheaper than you can get from GFL. When we went into this, I contacted GFL because the contract specifically laid out what the provisions were for the sale of their carts. And I said, does this cut into your business model? Because it changes the contract. And it was the laugh on the other end. And it was like, no, take the cart business from us, please. We have zero problem entering into a letter of understanding on that contract because the carts are a very, very difficult part of the business. They break, the wheels pop off, people complain about the condition of the handling of the cart. And before we went into the garbage cart business, we didn't deal with that. We would put pressure on the vendor to say, please take the trash in an orderly way, and if you break the cart, replace the cart, so forth. But we were not responsible for service delivery. So when we're out in the community, and I assume, Mr. Johnson, your people are delivering these carts, and the cart rolls off the back of the truck and crashes into a parked car, we incur that cost. We have the workman's comp if the delivery driver falls off the back of the truck delivering it. We assume all the responsibility so that we can lose thousands of dollars per month. And when the guy who put together business plans for a living before he arrived here told us 6 months ago, this is exactly where we'd be, and we're here, I know I'm going to get a flowery speech about what a wonderful program it is for all of those people that, have a bedazzled cart. I would take note of the very first customer on the chart, and Supervisor Acciavatti bought about 6 of them, I think. I don't know how much you generate in the way of compost for Christmas gifts or what, but you received a tremendous benefit and a savings in your purchase of those. It's just that it was done at the expense of all the taxpayers who subsidized that. So if we're going to go into the cart business and provide our residents with a cart, I'd prefer that we just be honest about it and say we'd like to provide a cart to everybody. What does that look like? Instead of getting in the cart sales business, we say to the residents, all of the residents, and I know from previous discussions, we're all about parity and equity. One Chesterfield, what's good for one is good for all. Let's do it for all. Let's just provide as a service. You move into the township, you live in the township will deliver you a cart. Let's get out of the sales business altogether and make it part of our operating expense. At least that is a genuine expenditure, and we all agree what we're doing. We're voting to provide carts. We went into the garbage cart business. The business-minded person predicted utter failure from a business model standpoint. It's proven by our finance director. And I think, as Treasurer Lafata pointed out, it's a little light in terms of all the people that'll handle it. I'd point out that you're not an inexpensive employee. The hours that you spent tracking down this data is not reflected. But I would venture to guess that your salary and the salary of those you communicated with, you can add a few $1,000s more in man hours. So all of these things point to another failed boondoggle. And from a business standpoint, it makes no sense. We got business people on the board. I'm sure they'll agree with me. And if we're transitioning this into a Christmas cart program, Christmas gift garbage cart program, I'm okay with that too, but let's just call it what it is, and let's do something that is above board.
What's going on in my chair here? Believe it or not, this is one of the, we're getting close to a legitimate policy discussion. Take away all the, I'm not going to take any shots, the sarcasm, the ridiculousness. We're kind of getting to the heart of a real policy discussion. There's some things here that got to be cleared up. from a basic government standpoint. So I did spend a lot of time in public service and also in the private sector. In government, we are not here to make a profit off of our residents. We are here to provide a service. And you're going to see a whole lot on the budget of 16 and prior and the budget moving forward. There's factors in play such as labor and what we do, the buildings, the folks. So it's a total fugazi that you could, the point that Treasurer Lafata was trying to make, that the costs are these costs. I would ask the question, how many times have you put a profit and loss together for anything in this township? What do we as a government even have the option to terminate an employee that is already on our team? Is there any services not getting done that we're getting done? There's a whole change in tone as to what we've done here, and I'm not surprised that the two individuals that spoke before me are speaking again here on a half an hour on an item that they didn't support then. A township-wide cart program, I'm all in. We pitched that as well. It's $1.7 million. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a cart program that is keeping trash out of our ditches. We're talking about a sanitation type department to keep trash out of the roadways, to help our environment, to deal with the biggest problem that we get calls on, everybody, DPW, I'm sure everyone in this township, and that is trash collection. That's why they touch every can, or every person 3 times a week, all year. In the cans were a solution to this. So we brought this as a solution. I think it's a very good solution. There's not a loss on this. Don't kid yourself. And if you want to take the APO and instead of selling them for 58 and 55, sell them for more, then change the APO. If you want to get rid of this program, then have the legislative and public policy intuition to put an agenda on to get rid of this program. And it's not just this program. If you want an ethics policy and you're going to get up here and whatever the policy is, I'll keep it to this agenda item. If you want to actually do something and bring all these passionate speeches about how ridiculous providing a service to our residents is, then have the legislative intelligence to bring an agenda item forward and work with the team to try to make this better. But to take this program and try to fuzz this over with the most ridiculous shell and pea game I've ever seen is just ridiculous. Vicki, how many other times have you been asked to run a profit and loss when you can run this government? How many what services aren't getting done, Director Johnson, by Mr. Palomino spending I shouldn't have said a name, I'm sorry. This is the employees, whoever's working on this, spending 2-3 hours this day, 4 hours this day. What's not getting done? I know the answer. The building that what would be in that building if these carts weren't in there? What's the sunk cost?
So given the directive and everything that we're for that employee, we're making everything, when he's handling the carts, he's handling carts, delivering trash, whatever it may be, with the complaints as they're handled. When that stuff's caught up, then the work that's being done could be maintaining buildings, putting lights up in the building, replacing exit lights. There are certain things that are being done when there's I want to say downtime, but before this got picked up, there was ways, so there's stuff still being completed. Now that this is picked up, this is his full-time job. So this is all he's doing every day because he's delivering carts nonstop every day for the past 2 weeks.
There'll be a drop. No, I'll go back to you after round 2. No.
I didn't understand the answer. I just wanted to ask.
When it comes back around to you. Do you honestly think you'd let me do that to you?
You asked a question, you didn't answer it for clarity, but I'll make a note.
Go ahead. I'm happy with this program. I cannot wait to show the facilities and operations as a whole with the lawn and the snow and the buildings getting built. This is an important piece of the puzzle. If you want to charge the residents more for them, change the APO. If you want to get rid of the this service altogether, change the APO. I would support lowering the price. I believe in it that much. I think it's that important for rodents and to encourage uniformity and to provide this service to our residents. We buy the carts for $45, they sell them for $58. It's that carrying cost of $13 that you weigh in. You're figuring out how much does it take time for a truck to drive there. Well, we still own that truck. How much does it take time to what does it cost to store them in a building that we own? That's not a real cost. What does it take time for that individual, knowing that we're a unionized outfit? There's not a not a savings there. If you would like to increase the price to our residents, bring that item up, and you would have my support if you decreased the cost of the residents to get these carts. I like the program, and I'd like to continue it. Trustee Vosburg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I support the motion on the floor. And when I received this, I was actually got a copy earlier today because I was curious about the bottom line of this. And I went to look at the revenue minus the cost of goods sold. I wanted to make sure we're selling them at a loss from what we were paying, and we are not. The income. Make sure I'm looking at the right page. Anyway, we are ahead by $4,700 gross is our gross profit. All that means is we're taking in more money from selling the carts than what the carts cost us. I'm assuming this was the cost of goods sold. It wasn't just the total cost, it was the cost of goods sold, right? All right, so, and then my next question and thoughts were, some of the things have been brought up a little bit. Did we have to pay more for existing space to put this in? No, I believe the answer to that is no. Did we have to hire another employee because of this? And I believe the answer was no. So, there's always going to be these other costs that you would cost allocated. A true cost accountant is going to do that. Because in the profit world, they do need to know, will that, is it cost effective? Is there a return on the investment? But in our case, we are service oriented. We provide service to the taxpayers and to the residents that live here in the township. So I can continue supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just before I lose my track, the supervisor asked you a question after he excoriated the numbers, saying that they were ridiculous, and then asked you whether or not you had ever done a cost loss benefit, all of that. He challenged the numbers. Then he asked you, Mr. Johnson, if you could speak to the amount of time wasted for the employee to gather these numbers. What was that employee doing? I think you misheard the question, because what you said was you basically he identified the employee who is in charge of this. Then that person's job is now this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. So the full-time, the FTE that is now designated to the cart isn't somebody new to the township employee. That's just an employee that's been designated to the cart program. When Trustee Vosburg asked you, did we not hire anybody new, I hope that you recall the presentation we had regarding DPW staff being incredibly busy and the need to contract out lawn service. We heard that presentation from DPW. This is the same department that has now been taxed of FTE for the cart business, which is losing money. I appreciate the service mindset, but the taxpayers didn't ask us to go into a cart sales industry to lose money and provide carts at a loss picked up by the other taxpayers. There's a disproportionate benefit. The individuals who buy the cart have their cart subsidized by the rest of the taxpayers. I don't have a problem with numbers. There have been numbers, and there have been occasions where intuitively I thought the numbers were different. So it might have met a vigorous challenge, Ms. Bauer. I might have come into your office and asked you to, and you always do, you explain them to me. But numbers don't lie. The end column is a $19,000 loss. The only person who thinks that's a winner is the person that had the idea to bedazzle carts at a loss 8 months ago. It makes no sense from a business model, and I understand that we're in the service industry, but this idea that there's a increase in rodent infestation and trash in the ditches, we heard, and sanitary issues, all of these, we have ordinances that require people to maintain their property. They put trash and they maintain their grass and so forth, or else they face enforcement of the ordinance. There's nothing in the sanitation ordinance that talks about you must provide at a loss carts to the resident. It's what we do. It's what we do. It wasn't supported back then because it was identified by people who have business experience. He laid it out for you in a very patient and articulate way, and he said to you, you will lose money with this system, and the only people who will be in gratitude are the people that are able to purchase the cart at a discounted rate. That was challenged vigorously. They don't work for Treasurer Lafata. In fact, you sent out a memo that said nobody works here but for you. You're the day-to-day operations guy. Statutorily, they report to you. Your team came back and said you're losing 20 grand over the last 8 months, and you called their work ridiculous. That's just the epitome of there's like a loss aversion here. There's this. I don't care what the numbers say. This is a good program because I put a Chesterfield logo on the can, and it's a bedazzled can, and it's a great program because I said it is. It's not. The data speaks. It speaks exactly the way of the treasurer 9 months ago. He told you you'd be here. You're here, and you're still arguing numbers that are causing taxpayers to subsidize the CART program. It's just a waste of money. We can do a service if that's what we want to vote on, but you entered into a business arrangement. It failed miserably. It's losing money, and it's costing taxpayers money. If you want to give carts away, let's give carts away. I agree. Let's have a policy that says we're going to provide carts. Doing this under this business model idea when you were told it was going to lose money, and it has, just acknowledge you made a mistake. We'll help you fix it, and we'll come to a program that actually defines what it is that we're trying to accomplish in a calm way. There's no need for adjectives of ridiculousness in this or attacking our staff for bringing legitimate numbers. The numbers don't lie. It's losing money. Let's fix it. Let's not keep pouring money down the sewer.
I do think the individuals up there are legitimate. I think you are illegitimate.
No, I didn't do the numbers, Mr. Supervisor. I was just speaking to the numbers.
Are you done?
I just want to be clear. I didn't do the numbers. You know that, right?
Are you done?
Just to be clear, I didn't present these.
Okay, great. I got it.
Well,
Crystal clear.
I'm glad you understand now.
This was never a business model. This was never a business decision. What are you talking about?
This is providing a service to our customers who would like to purchase cans. if you want to do them township-wide, do them township-wide. I want to ask this question though. If we take this service away from the customers and we do not supply cans anymore, so take away the cost of the cans, the cost of goods sold, will we have more or less expenses? What expenses will be cut from the township on that list, including gas, truck, personnel, and the building, which is the Gratiot DPW building right now, about 1,000 square foot? How many costs will be cut? I would also like to point out this individual does not just do this. Now, right now, there's a big run on cans. Of course, there's a ramp up here, and there's a lot of deliveries, but there's also picking up trash. There's multiple other things that this individual will be doing for an infant sanitation department, which is ultimately where we get to, is a sanitation department. And if we could get rid of the sarcasm and the ridiculousness and legitimately work together, which we tried to do for the last 2 years on this single waste hauler contract, and I don't get any participation from these folks, then let's do that. But it's not going to happen with this group. And maybe if you could ask that question. So if we get out of the can business, will the employee cost go away?
The majority of the costs are fixed in nature, meaning we already have incurred them, and it's not something that...
No, not say we get out of it in the future. The wage cost, will that go away if we don't sell cans?
So again, the wage cost would be fixed. Gas would be a variable cost. The majority of the costs that are associated with this are fixed in nature.
They're already fixed for the year, fixed for duration, union contracts, buildings we own, and things like that.
It's just a time allocation.
Trucks we own.
It's a time allocation issue. If you don't have them on this, you have them on something else. But the overall cost for the employee will not change because of the union contract.
Correct.
And then additionally, for the question I think both of you guys had brought up, this is the only, so I do the sales tax on this monthly. It is included my time that, estimated. I have Ellen's time that's estimated. So we did try to do a very, very encompassing thing on everything that was related to it. So 100% of the sales tax stuff, because this is the only one that we have related to it, has this. Most other studies that we would do are on a macro level, like the water and sewer department, macroly, we do this, so I don't want you guys to think that we don't look at the overall revenue and expense and stuff like that. The reason why this is kind of different is because it was requested, but two, on a micro one, this is the only thing that we have that is a sales tax generating item. So it's different than a lot of our time studies that we would do. So even like F&O is doing a great job on really trying to break down their costs and what they're doing on a time study level. Water and sewer is doing that. So we are looking at this kind of stuff across the board. This is different. It is the only item that I am required to file sales tax for. So.
And I won't speak again. I believe in the program. I would actually lower the price to the residents, and I would get more of these cards in people's hands. Any further discussion? Yes, you can. Go ahead, Treasurer Lafata.
Mark Palomino, they used to cut grass. He used to fix plumbing leaks. He used to do some carpentry around here. He used to do the electrical and change out light fixtures and light bulbs. Now we call a plumber and they come out and they charge us a surcharge to come out and they charge us an hourly rate. So there are things that could be done by this man if he wasn't doing carts, but then we sourced out the grass cutting. So there were things that this man could be doing. Every time there's an electrical issue with a light fixture, nobody goes out to change it. We call the electrician and we pay the hourly rate for the electrician. So there are things that are available for this person to do and to be utilized because he does have skills that are more far adapted to building maintenance than putting carts together. The other thing is we're looking at this as it's not a business, but in all reality, sales tax, according to the government and the state, it is a business because it's being taxed. And it should be looked at And I asked if we could create, like the water and sewer has an enterprise fund, if we could create its own fund. And I was, well, you can't create a fund that's a losing fund because it's not gonna have any money in it. You're gonna have to keep feeding it from somewhere else. So you can't even create a fund for this because it's a constant loss, which doesn't set very well, doesn't make any sense. You're talking about providing a service. I think that we could call GFL out, we could work something equitable out, and for a lot less than $44 a can that it's costing us right now to put that in somebody's backyard, we can do it for a lot less. And to continue to go on like this without addressing this is this foolish, and we're not giving the residents the best cost product for the price. Now, it's not time for you to start talking. I'm not done yet.
I'm not speaking anymore. I just wanted to see if you were done. You seem like you were done.
But the problem is nobody is saying that the township is supposed to be making a profit. The township's not in the business of making a profit, but the township isn't in the business of losing money. And it seems like the more carts we sell, the more money we lose. It's a proven fact. And this people can do other things. He has skill sets. So it doesn't mean if he's not putting carts together, he's going to be sitting on his hands. And if there's a vehicle that's not being used, then we don't replace it next time around. That vehicle goes out and it gets sold. We probably have too many vehicles in the field right now than we should have. It's just about every person has a vehicle. I'm sure we have too many vehicles. So there's a lot of ways to cut cost, but right now, what we should do is how we can get from under losing over $44 per every can we put out. And it's not by just going out and buying $50,000 worth of more trash cans. Because somebody thinks it's a wonderful thing, so there's no effort put into it, just like we've been saying for years that the water and sewer department and the building department should be separated out, because we've got Kevin that's on a water and sewer payroll.
Try to stay on this.
I'm staying on this right now. We've got Kevin that's on a water and sewer payroll that's worried about trash carts right now. And it's not, and you want to keep the cost of water down. If we did the same thing with the cost of water that we're doing with this, why don't we sell 1,000 gallons of water for 50 cents less than we are right now, so that maybe we only lose like $20,000 a month, but that's okay because we're going to provide a service to the residents. We're going to give them some water at a lower cost than any place else, but we're providing a service. It's the same thing. You provide garbage cans at a lower cost, you lose money. Why don't we provide a lower, water and sewer rate per 1,000 gallons at a lower cost? I'm sure they'll make the residents happy. It's the same thing. If you do this and you do that, and if it's not the same, then there's something wrong. And I don't understand it. And if you really want to look at business sense, I will take my resume any day and I will post it next to the supervisor.
Please keep it to the agenda item. We don't need to hear about your resume. Agenda item. There's no nexus there.
You're talking about this.
Agenda item, please.
You're saying this isn't a business item.
Your resume has nothing to do with the Public Works carts. Agenda item.
Point of order, Mr. Supervisor. I thought your resume with your numerous boards and
agenda
commissions,
item, please.
You offered it as
Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to call the question.
Motion to call the question by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosburg. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
no.
Trustee Treasurer Lafata.
No way.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Yes, for sure. Motion passes. Item 8G.
Item 8G is a request by Public Safety Director Kersten to adopt resolution. Excuse me, Mr. Supervisor, just I have a point of order. We took a motion to call the question. We needed to take a motion for the vote,
correct.
The item itself. I beg your
I
pardon.
move you can just forego that.
Item
You got
eight-
your
item
votes.
8F.
No need to do that. We can move on. He's right. It's already a done deal.
We still need to take the vote, Trustee Joseph. We need to have it. We need to have it
We
for
need
the
to have an
record.
accurate.
It needs to be
okay.
for the
Clerk Berry,
record, sir.
please call the roll.
This would be on the motion to approve a recommendation by Public Works to appropriate $50,000 for restocking of garbage carts, recycling carts, and compost carts as needed from GL number 1010001010000. Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson? Trustee Joseph?
No.
Trustee Demink?
Aye.
Trustee Vosburg?
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata?
Never.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Motion passes. Item 8G.
Item 8G was previously stated as a request by Public Safety Director Kersten to adopt Resolution Number 2020-21, resolution declaring a local state of emergency, extending the current declaration until August 1st, 2020.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by trustee Demink, support by trustee Vosburg. Discussion. Comments from the public? Oh, trustee Vosburg.
Thank you. I do have a question. And I don't believe, I don't believe the county is extending theirs, I had heard. And will this help us, or how is this different from the county's decision? Thank you.
To answer your question, no, the county did not. I simply asked for this because of the environment that we're still in and because of the funding that we're trying to recoup for some of the expenses that we put forward. There is some funding that has been released. The county just received a large sum. It hasn't been dispersed yet. And we're being in the environment that we're in, we may still have an expense. So I think it's important that this continue at least for a period of time till we know exactly how that fund is going to be dispersed, whether or not we have some of these claims that this may reoccur. And I think it's prudent for us to stay on top of this.
Any further comments? Motion by trustee Demink, support by trustee Vosburg to approve item 7G as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink? Aye. Trustee Vosburg?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata?
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7H.
Item 7H is to adopt Resolution 2020-20 to opt in as a participating community to the Macomb County Treasurer PAYS program.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Demink,
Support.
support by trustee Vosburg. Discussion. Treasurer Lafata.
This is a program that the Macomb County Treasurer is looking for support from each one of the townships and cities in Macomb. It's modeled after the one that's being done in the city, Detroit, Wayne County, so that people can stay in their houses. There's basically no financial downside for the township. They're looking for support when the delinquency goes to the county. The township as whole. The only downside would be is that the piece of property or whatever went in foreclosure was worth less than the taxes that were owed, which would be extremely rare. It's on page 106. It actually states that if the township doesn't want to support this, that none of the properties in Chesterfield Township will be considered for this program so that people can stay in their house. It's primarily the funding and it's being taken care of by the county. So it's up to the township whether they want to give our residents the opportunity to keep their houses a little bit longer than possible. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Motion by trustee Demink, support by trustee Vosburg to approve item 8H as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink? Aye. Trustee Vosburg? Aye. Trustee Anderson? Trustee Joseph? Treasurer Lafata?
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti?
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
8I.
Item 8I is to approve a request from the Treasurer's Office and IT Department to purchase a time block of 100 hours from High Tech at a cost of $10,000 from account number 101-275-934-000.
Motion by trustee Anderson,
Support.
support by treasurer Lafata. Discussion. Comments from the public. Motion by trustee Anderson, support by treasurer Lafata to approve item 8I as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson. Treasurer Lafata. Trustee Vosburg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Motion passes. Item 9, addendum. There are no addendum. Item 10, public comment. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Barry, I gotta take a restrooms.
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. Thought it was interesting, the first meeting, part of the meeting where everybody went over what you consider ethics requirements and signing up to them. And in thinking about it, I wanted to know if this board would willing to essentially go through the same thing, determining what the ethics are expected of the police department. We've got a good police department here, but we've seen examples of what's going on in other parts of the country with the police department. We just had an example where the the Shelby Township Police Commissioner resigned because of his ethnic statements online. I think we're losing an officer in New Baltimore for a similar thing. And I think basically this board should put up what it thinks our officers should behave like and what it expects them to behave like. The other thing that came to mind when I was thinking about that, there was an incident probably about a month ago where somebody in one of the subdivisions called the police department here, saying that there was a black man running through their subdivision. Our police department responded, basically not knowing if anything happened or anything, and went to the man's house and I guess had a conversation with the man and his family. I don't know what the conversation was about, but essentially it's probably something that shouldn't have been done. It was kind of like the black people are complaining, driving while black or jogging while black, because I understand the next day the chief called the family and apologized for it. So I think it'd be well for this board to sit down and state what they feel, how people should be treated, all people should be treated in this township and what they expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Let's bring it up.
First name's John, last name's Speaka, 53978 Connor. Just to go back to what the board discussed tonight, the board passed a code of ethics tonight. Going back to the code of ethics, you know, in politics, you have to lead by example. I've said that before. And now that the board did pass this code of ethics, I want to go back to my original question, and thank you, David, for answering the who factor and actually putting a name to what the statements were in regards to. Going back to the who factor, if it's true that we have a public elected official that's working part-time and getting paid full-time, and he or she is not doing their job, then I would expect that the supervisor would take the appropriate action in any disciplinary action or any action as far as how their pay is affected. Because I work in the private sector, and if I'm expected to be there at 9 till 5 and I only work 9 to 3, I only get paid 9 to 3. But if I come in a half a day, I only get paid for that half a day. It should be no different being an elected official with taxpayer money on how an individual or how the taxpayers are subsidizing that individual. So now that this ethics thing was passed on a code of ethics, now we've got a duty and obligation to live up to that code of ethics and do what is right. And then the other thing that I seen tonight, which I thought was interesting, is the township supervisor said that we have a very dysfunctional board. I'm going to disagree with that because what I seen tonight was, yeah, the entire board isn't complacent with what a certain individual has to say, but not being complacent doesn't make you dysfunctional. It actually, a dysfunctional board, in my opinion, would be if everybody was complacent in agreeing with what a certain individual said. So what I seen tonight was I actually seen government working for the people. And that's what it's all about. And it's actually good to see government working for the individual taxpayers. That's what we want. That's what I seen tonight. Because when you're complacent, then you're dysfunctional. Because if you've got a group of individuals that all agree with one another, that's not what government's about. Everybody has their own opinions and different ideas, and that's what I seen tonight. And the other thing that I seen tonight was Mr. Lafata had brought up, I guess we were under contract where he got out of a contract where we were paying $31,000, but he was going on a list, and I never got to hear the rest of that list because he got cut off. That is relevant because it goes back to, again, this code of ethics. If you're going to pass a code of ethics, then you have to live up to those ethics. Because if you're not getting authorization and you're spending money, you're not coming in, you're not doing your job, you're only here half the time and you're getting full-time pay, how could you support a code of ethics if you're not even meeting that code of ethics? Just as a resident, that's what I observed, that's what I seen, but this is government working for the people, so we can't be complacent. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Bring it up to the board. Trustee Joseph.
I appreciate you letting me start it first again. The speaker hit the nail on the head. Never seen him in the audience before. I hope that you watch these meetings online. I hope more residents do, because as I go out into the community, I hear the sentiments of that individual over and over and over again. People that come to these board meetings that have issues, whether it be something going on in their neighborhood or a particular issue that impacts a certain population. We have at times had big crowds, but most of the time we get a dozen or so people here. And when we have those moments where people come in for whatever reason, an issue that's important to them, the takeaway they have is exactly the takeaway that our speaker had tonight. More debate, less complacency, and he said very clearly, when 7 individuals agree on the same thing all the time, it's clear only one person is doing the thinking. I think, however, we could speed up the remainder of these meetings until the new board is seated if the 4 in majority would just come forward and tell us what they're going to approve, and then allow us to just speak on each one of the issues and voice our objection, just put our objection on the record, rather than having an elongated meeting. I think you could just come in, whatever it is that's been, agreed upon, put your 4 votes in on all of the issues that you've worked out, and then we could just put our objections on the record, and we could save people a lot of frustration and time and gaveling and the like. One of the things that we debated tonight, there's no sense going over, the trash carts are great for the people that bought trash carts. I'd like to see that be a little bit more transparent as we got deeper into, is it a business, is it not? And if you're paying sales tax on a product that you're selling, you're in business of trash carts. It's just that simple. And you're losing money. And you're losing money consistently, and getting angry at the people that come back and just do the computation and saying, oh, well, we wouldn't save any money if they weren't doing carts. And then Treasurer Lafata points out, well, you would, because you wouldn't have to call a plumber, an electrician, and then we call the question. Let's call the question. We've been talking on this too much. We won't hear any more of that. When you talk about a business decision and Treasurer Lafata offers his resume just as a support for his enforcing what he believes to be an accurate thing, we say this is campaigning, you're not going to put your resume out there. But in the last two board meetings, we had Clerk Berry talk at length about a decision that she made based on her business prowess, and then complimented the supervisor for his business prowess. It was like watching Chip and Dale, complimenting each other for their outstanding business prowess. Tonight, in defense of a motion, we heard the supervisor's extensive history in the legislature and having served in all these various capacities, and he was allowed to do that for as long as he wanted. He never gavelled himself or said, Mr. Supervisor, keep this to a business meeting. He was just allowed to do that because that's what happens. When he's done attacking people, and his favorite word is ridiculous, one of his supporters will call the question, and then we'll end debate. So as I say, let's just go at the beginning of the board meeting and just declare the things that you're going to jam through at a 4-3 vote. We'll get an opportunity to put our objections on the record, and then we can move on. We get out of here, at a reasonable hour. I am grateful, however, that what happened tonight was that the trash carts were moved from the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, there is no opportunity to have debate. The last attempt to slide this by the residents was done on the consent agenda. It was removed from the consent agenda to afford discussion. So at least individuals like the speaker that came forward tonight, and anybody who's brave enough to watch these online can see, is that at least there was discussion about their money. And their money is being wasted, and we could do better. We had individuals, they were on the 3 end of a 4-3 vote, no, that said it would go exactly the way it has. It did, and now we talk about a service. We're in the service of losing money for your record. That's the service we're in. Wanted to close on a couple of very, very positive things. Ironically, it was something that one of the speakers brought forward as a concern having to do with ethics. First, I want to give tremendous appreciation and gratitude to our first responders in our police department, because I'd like to share with you what happened, what I was aware of as the rioting and looting and protesting and anger was occurring in some of the cities in our state and around our country. There was a big rally, march. Many of you are aware, I'm sure you read it in the paper, and may have even participated in it, the march on M59 on Saturday. And at some point last week, a resident of the township posted on the invitation to come out to that march an opportunity to continue the sentiments expressed at that march here in Chesterfield. And I believe that the police station was just inundated with all kinds of calls from concerned residents about the possibility of violent protests or looting or rioting. And we don't want that here. And the place that the gathering point was a very difficult place, because from a traffic standpoint and from a safety standpoint, if you had a lot of people gather in that particular point, it is entirely possible that you could create a very serious traffic problem where people could be injured inadvertently trying to express their First Amendment rights. Our police administration reached out to the individuals that were organizing that event and made it very clear that they supported their First Amendment rights, even though some of those people believe that the police are not their friends, in essence. They're calling for, it's a tenuous relationship at best, and our police chief went out and assured the individuals that they would have every right afforded them, and if there was anything that the Chesterfield Police Department could do to make their event safe and successful, within reason, we would accommodate. And so when the event on M59 ended, I went over to the location and just was curious as to what the population would be. There looked to be about 15 young people, and they were carrying signs, and they were talking about, fair treatment for everybody, and Black Lives Matter. And I know some individuals hear Black Lives Matter and they respond, well, all lives matter. And it's taken some time for me to understand this, and I'm grateful to have two very, very liberal-minded daughters that we have some terrific debates at the home. And the comment that my daughter made to me is, Dad, there's not an assertion that the Black Lives Matter doesn't start with only. And she made a little joke about the when Greenpeace in 1975 talked about save the whales. They didn't say save the whales and screw over all the other fish. It was just an indication that there was some concern about that population. And so Mr. Kadich's comments, not so much from an ethics standpoint, but from an opportunity to talk with our police department about what we do moving forward. And I think the reason we're different than a lot of other communities that are experiencing widespread outrage and rioting is the community policing that's been done in our community. The opportunities and the investment is not just something that our department does when they want a millage increase. Our police officers are phenomenally committed to this community, all members of this community, and they go to great lengths to talk to people, all people, about how their life in this township will be protected, and they are there to serve them. And we don't have some of the problems that are seen in neighboring communities because we've paid a premium for our police department. We have a number of individuals in our department that hold master's degrees. They have master's degrees in things like counseling and social work and criminal justice. And when they respond to issues, they are able to de-escalate situations that could be volatile in other places. But I do believe it begs the question, what is the role of our police department? What do we want officers doing? Because the national and the statewide expectation is that they have to be, if you call and there's an active shooter at the school, you want a warrior, an armed warrior to respond to that school. If you have a mentally ill child who is off their medication and is acting erratically in your house, you maybe don't want that warrior coming to your home. But we don't have a mechanism that says, dispatch, send the warrior, or send the social workery officer, or send the officer that has a degree in psychology, and they're trained to go out and create peace, to take a volatile situation and make it peaceful, even if it means they have to use force. And there's where some really ugly situations can happen. I think our police department and our officers will say that the most dangerous call they go on are family disturbance calls. Family disturbance calls are typically calls where people are in elevated states and they're not reacting or acting rationally. That individual may come at the officer in a physical way, and the officer's training dictates a certain response. That's an area that we should examine in our community. That's an area we should sit down with our law enforcement and talk about how we can be a better public safety team. What are we asking our police to do? In this community, we ask them to do everything from be the warrior, to the psychologist, to the social worker, to the marital counselor, to the animal control officer, to the 911 response to flooding over Jefferson. When the pump station goes down, they have to send an officer over there to do that. They are the catch-all, be-all of our community. And it's an expectation that is too much. I have a great friendship with one of our county commissioners, Commissioner Kraft, who sits on the CMH board. I'm going to reach out to him, and I want to talk to him about how we can look at making some changes in our department and bringing some things forward that make us a better equipped public safety department. And in a few months, we're going to be talking about how we fund that department. And last year, we heard, and unfortunately this board passed by a vote of 4-3, more slashes to the public safety budget. It's projected to happen again this year. In an election year, people will campaign on tax cuts at a time when we can least afford that. What we should be looking to do is making sure that we do never, ever have a situation like has occurred in other communities. And we can do that by taking a look at the role of our department, and not cutting and playing games with the public safety budget in an election year. let's keep that in mind when we deliberate on the public safety SAD in a few weeks or a few months. Lastly, I would just like to thank Treasurer Lafata. He has been a real advocate and champion of our police department. You took over today, lunch for the entire department. Two of my favorite things, Treasurer Lafata and Marco's Pizza arrived at the police station today. And I know that you're not on Facebook, so you probably won't see it, but the department acknowledged you and thanked you for your contribution to them. You're not a guy that does much in the way of breaking your arm, patting yourself on the back, but I know at every open house, you make these unbelievable cornhole boards that are donated with a really just the craftsmanship. They're raffled off. They go to the Friends of Chesterfield Police. Last open house, I noticed we were dishing out snow cones, and every kid in line kept coming forward with a donation. And I couldn't figure out where these kids were getting all the money. And I looked about what seemed a quarter mile down, and Treasurer Lafata was passing out dollar bills to every kid in line and saying, if you want to make a donation to the Friends of Chesterfield Police, put it in that bucket when you get up there. He's a real hero to me, and he does a lot of good in this township. And his advocacy for the police department and going out of your way to make sure that they had lunch is not something that you'll take credit for, but you deserve it. And I thank you for your tireless effort, not only in the police department, but the service you provide to this township. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. First thing, I'd like to thank the gentleman that made his comments about his perception of the board, which I think is more reflective in this community than it's often thought about. During the height of the Vietnam War, those of you old enough to remember it, and living in America at that time, it was quite decisive, pros and cons, a lot of opinions. In the late 60s, I recall a senator from New England, I used to recall the name too, but he got up in the Senate and he says, why don't we declare victory and bring everybody home? That was his kind of a smart aleck, I don't know, that was opinion, the end of the Vietnam War. But he put that spin on it, and I think of what I hear at times when there's a township program here and there's a certain majority support for it, and I hear the descriptive terms like it's really wonderful, it's really working, whether it is or not from another person's objective. Someone tags a positive thing on it, and that's becomes dogmatic. And you will have robust discussion on topics. We're not here to rubber stamp things. We do have a 4-3 board. Been living with it for 3.5 years. We are representing people the best we can, and that's going to occur. And finally, I'd like to say we had a lot of discussion about this ethics clause, the preamble with 8 specific things, as it was described, this award-winning document out of California, I believe. I was getting a little teary-eyed for a while there. But you should have ethics. It should be morally built into a person, not have to subscribe to it like, hey, look at subtitle 3. You violated here. We should just demonstrate it in our everyday function. And as far as this board goes, if there's anything that comes out of this ethics code, I hope that as board members, we can make our statements, carry on the discussion, and that other members here will abide by this code of ethics and cut with the snarky, undersided remarks that are not necessary. And do it for the sake of making this a business meeting, to do this for the sake to maintain a degree of professionalism and decorum while we have these meetings. Thank you. Trustee Domingue.
First, I'd like to give a shout out to Vicki Gray, who's been a member of the Parks and Rec Commission for several years. She had just informed us she'll be resigning at the end of June for reasons. So I would like to give a shout out to Vicki and thank you for your years of dedication. I've worked with you for the last several years as liaison from the board to the Parks and Rec Department. Thank you for your service. You've been a very much added help to Parks and Rec, done a great job for everything you've done at your volunteering time, with all the programs we had, except for this year with the COVID situation. So the Vicki Gray, thank you so much for your time and effort that you've dedicated to Chesterfield Parks and Recreation. And on that note, there will be an opening in Parks and Rec. If anyone in the community is interested, you can submit a letter to the supervisor with your intentions and that you'd be interested in serving on the Parks and Rec Department. Also to Director Kersten and everyone in the Public Safety Department, thank you for everything that you've done, and for all your great work. It's definitely a difficult time for everyone at this. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Vosburg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Wanted to just mention three things that have happened in the last couple meetings. One is we talked about trash cans being provided for sale to residents. We approved that. We approved personnel bonuses related to the extra things that were going on because of the COVID thing. We talked about keeping water rates down, possibly even when our rates might go up, and we decided to keep them down. These are all decisions that this board has made regarding policy that the majority thinks is a good thing to do as a service to the residents of this township. And one of the questions or one of the issues brought up was who are elected officials accountable to. They're accountable to the people who elected them to office, and they have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility as elected officials to the people who have elected us to office, and that's the mechanism for hiring and firing elected officials. And I'd like to close with a thank you also to the Public Safety Department for your continued communication with residents and board members over all the issues of the past 3-4 months, starting with the COVID and going on to other issues and the flooding and different things. I know you're looking at Chief Kersten, your whole department has just gone above and beyond, and I hope you continue letting them know that we appreciate that. Thank you.
Treasurer Lafata.
I'd like to thank a resident that came to the podium. I appreciate good government, and the only way to have good government is to have dialogue. Without any dialogue, it becomes stale, and nobody knows who's managing and what's going on in the township. This board meeting is probably one of the only avenues for the residents that might be home watching these videos to understand really what goes on in the township, who does what and who doesn't come in, and everything else that's involved. We now have an ethics code. I don't know how we're going to enforce it. I would have a question, and it's related to one board meeting that we run the township as a business, and the next board meeting, it's okay for a loss. So when we started in the garbage cart business or enterprise, we didn't understand that there was going to be a loss, which would be bad business, or we did understand there was going to be a loss, which to not voice it at that point in time, according to this, would be unethical, I think, moving forward. Everybody, I guess, is going to be a role model based on this new ethics code. So if there's infractions to the ethics code, is it okay to put it on the board agenda so we can hash it out so all the residents can see who's ethical and who isn't? There doesn't seem to be a punishment. So if I find something that's not ethical in the workplace, I think that the residents should understand who and why. And I think one of the ways to vet it is we'll bring it to the board as an agenda item. If it's a violation of the purchasing policy or credit card policy or whatever it is, I guess the best way to expose these unethics is to bring them to the board meeting. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciate the time, and I'm going to try to keep it short because it's almost 10 o'clock, and I know we've had to have a couple board members already have to sneak out and take some breaks. So I'm going to try to keep it short. But I want to thank the board so much for approving the ethics and values policy. I'd like to thank Trustee Vosburg for standing with me and acknowledging that this is something that we all wanted to speak, hopefully in one voice, that we would agree to do. We basically, when passing this, agreed to be ethical, professional, service-oriented, fiscally responsible, organized, communicative, collaborative, and progressive. And although we didn't all vote for it, I certainly hope that we will all aspire to it. And I think that's all we can ask for. And there's a lot of concern about it, again, not meant to be punitive, but that we would all, in fact, police ourselves in this way, because we know what we can do and we know where we can do better. And I think that so long as we all concentrate on those basic core principles and concentrate on doing those things better, we're going to get better government and our residents are going to get better service. And I think that I'm very excited that this passed tonight. Certainly, it was important to me, important enough that I knew that if I brought it forward, that I would suffer political assassination attempts. I would suffer quite a bit of heat, and I got that, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, I got something better for our residents that I was satisfied with. At the end of the day, we all got better government. So if some of us have to take some hits, some of us have to take some arrows, that's what we're here for. We have to take those political hits sometimes to get the right things done. What was important is that the right thing got done. So we bloodied each other up a little bit. You guys see that all the time, and we see this all the time. And unfortunately, that's unfortunate. Hopefully we won't see that so much. But so what if we have to get a bloody nose every now and then to get the right thing done and get good things done? I'm willing to take those hits. That's why we put ourselves out there for public office, because we are willing to sometimes take some personal or, if you will, political hits in order to get good policy accomplished. And to me, it's very much worth it to do that. And so I'm glad that we're able to do that. So I'd like to thank the board for that. Also, I would hope that we would also have seen tonight, in light of the other things that we've seen, we had some good policy discussions. I think we got some other good things done. I'm very grateful for the passage of the water rate moratorium, if you will. Again, isn't it amazing how professional statesmen handle things? You can easily have a very spirited and difficult discussion and be attacked and then turn around and support the person who attacked you. Because it's not about the person, it's about the policy. It's about doing the right thing. Small thinkers concentrate on people, big thinkers with big ideas will concentrate on ideas. And that was a good idea. It didn't matter that it came from someone who clearly had some not so complimentary things to say. That's the whole point. The point is you need to be able to do those sort of things when you're in government and when you're in public office. You need to do the right thing, even if it may not be personally beneficial for you. That's the whole point. So I'm glad that we were able to see that today. I'm glad that anyone watching here, that the public was able to see that they saw that they got good government tonight, they got good policy tonight, and I'm grateful for that. Again, if anyone from the elections department, if anyone is wishing to have an absentee ballot, please contact the clerk's office. We will send that to you. You can also access it from our website. One other item that I would like to clarify that I was remiss in my department report that I would like to clarify now. We have been receiving several comments, handwritten comments back on the applications, on the absentee ballot applications that are coming into our office. Very concerning comments about, I got sent this, I didn't ask for it, please don't put me on the permanent list. Nice try, some sort of kind of creative comments as well. And people were concerned that our office sent those out. I'd like to clarify for everyone that our office did not send anyone an absentee ballot application who did not request it. That was done by the Michigan Secretary of State. We had no control over that whatsoever. So if you received an unsolicited application for an absentee ballot that did not come from the Chesterfield Township Clerk's office, and our staff has no control over that. So just to be aware of that, we will only send you an absentee ballot application if you request it. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention as well is that every single person who made a public comment tonight, be it a board member or a member of the public, with the exception of the township employees, every one of those individuals is running for office. So it wasn't an organic, obviously we're all residents here, but be mindful that everyone that spoke tonight is on the ballot, and that oftentimes there's motivations for making public comments as well. And I encourage them. I encourage everyone to make public comment, whether you're on the ballot or not. I would hope, though, that if the board is doing a good job, perhaps rescinding your candidacy would make sense if we got good government tonight, and we can continue to do that. So just be mindful, and I encourage everyone to come and engage with us, and we will continue to make efforts, I know in the clerk's office, to foster that engagement, managing comments as they come in online that you would like to make here at the board meetings. I believe we have mentioned, we have not missed any of those comments with exception of, I think that we had a technical glitch at some point. If you are trying to submit a comment and are having a technical issue, you can also contact us. I know that there is staff waiting also on our cell phones as well, that you can text Deputy Clerk Niza or myself to let us know that you're having a technical problem, and we will try to address that as well. And so if there's anyone having technical issues, we do not see them on our end, but please let us know if you are encountering that as well. And I said last before, but I knew I had a couple of things I wanted to mention. We are also in an ongoing process to continue digitizing and automating any permit requests, garage sale permits, vending permits, outdoor dining permits, and so forth. We are going to continue to automate and digitize those processes for you so that you will be able to access that online. You will be able to do the entire process digitally, so it will not require you to come into the township offices. So keep an eye on that, continue watching our website, and as those services come online for you, we will do our best in the clerk's department to make you aware of those options. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
The dysfunction in our community wanting better comment. What you see here at a board meeting for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, is a very small part of our government. This is a 24/7, 365 job for people who do it seriously. This is a team, and it constantly goes on and on. So the dysfunction is kind of self-caused by me. I don't do quid pro quos. I don't do quid pro quos. If I would have done that in 2016 when I was elected, I think our function would have been a lot better. The result has been relentless bullying, nasty emails, sabotage, lack of participation. That's the dysfunction I'm talking about. The board meetings are the board meetings. I've been through committee meetings in Lansing and very, very nasty meetings there. It's that end of the deal. I could have made my life a whole lot better if I did quid pro quos. I don't do those. And I will not do them with the next board, just like I will not do them with this board. And I'll close with this. Only a lifelong bureaucrat that has had his nose shoved in the public trough his entire life can conclude that an over $800,000 annual increase in record funding for the Chesterfield Township Public Safety Department could be perceived as a cut and a reason not to lower taxes for the residents of Chesterfield Township. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Trustee DeMink, support by Clerk Berry to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned.